All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back from our non-public session. Can I have a motion to come out of non-public?
So move. Second.
Roll call vote. Deb?
I, Deb Paul.
Aye, John Farrell.
Hi, Jim Butler. Hi, Chad Franz.
All right, can I have a motion to seal the minutes indefinitely?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
I, Deb Paul.
Aye, John Farrell.
Hi, Jim Butler. Hi, Chad Franz.
Thank you, folks. We are now in, at the beginning of our meeting, folks. This is public comment. Right at the beginning of public comment here, I'm going to handle some of the council's business quite quickly. Lisa, you have a new department head introduction for us, right?
I do, Mr. Chair. So I would like to introduce the council and the public to Ilona Arndt. She has interviewed for and been given a conditional offer for the position of the Director of Senior Affairs. Our wonderful director for the last several years, Kathy Blash, is retiring and moving to North Carolina as of June 10th, I believe. And so just a little bit about Ilona, and then she's invited up to come say hello to everyone. She comes to us from Meals on Wheels. She actually works for Meals on Wheels out of the senior center as we speak. And in that capacity has gotten to know many of the seniors as well as the other key players up at the senior center. She's been helping Kathy out on an informal basis for several months now. And when Kathy made her decision official, expressed her interest in the position, we underwent interviews and, like I said, made her the conditional offer. So I invite Ilona up. She's a Londonderry resident, just right to this middle table.
You can either go to the middle table, Ilona, or you can go over to the podium, whichever you're more comfortable with. All righty.
If that's okay.
So, Ilona, thank you. It's nice to meet you. We've met you outside of the room. Do you have any further questions or anything for the town council?
No, I'm very excited to know what the town council has in mind for the role, because I know there were some questions along the lines of the future. Very anxious to work on those once I establish what the status quo is and how things are running right now. I know that Kathy has worked very well with the town, has had a lot of cooperation and support, and I hope to have the same and give the same.
Well, Leona, thank you. Thank you for applying for the job. We have a great amount of confidence that I'm sure you know, we have over 1,200 homes that are 55 plus. We are an aging community, and we are looking for, for someone in that leadership role. You've demonstrated that you are the right person, and that without further ado, I'll ask for a motion from the council to approve you.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Chair
votes affirmative. Leona, congratulations and good luck. To our current director, Ms. Kathy Blash. A lot of things were expressed in private. Many of you probably don't realize that she oversaw the complete expansion of the senior center. New roof, new kitchen, new facility out the back, new bathrooms. And during all of this, and in listening to all of the folks here in town, she did nothing less than exceed expectations.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Kathy, and congratulations on your retirement. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in public comment. I do have an item here on my agenda for the Thornton Road right-of-way matter. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So, gentlemen, the way that this works is that I'm just going to need your name and address so that we can have that for our records. And I know that generally we only give about 5 minutes to speak, but I know that this is something that you've been working on for some time and are quite passionate about. So I'm going to lift the limit so that you guys can make your presentation, and we'll see where we go from there. So if you have names and addresses first, please.
Sure. John Broder at 27 Thornton Road.
Tim St. Gelais, 32 Thornton Road.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please proceed.
I'm here to voice my complaint about the permit for a driveway construction plan on Thornton Road extension. The property owner of 80 High Range Road have submitted a request for a driveway permit to build an access road from the back of the property to Thornton Road. The driveway plan would construct a gravel road through an extension of Thornton outside of the requester's property boundaries. The proposed construction and excavation would directly affect approximately 120 feet of my property line as well as my neighbor at 32 Thornton Road. Yet, we were not required to be notified of the plan. We urged the town of Londonderry to deny the driveway permit request and prevent construction due to the concerns below. The property has an existing driveway connecting its frontage to High Range Road, and the proposed driveway would be a second driveway to the property. The town of Londonderry's driveway regulation states no part of any driveway shall be constructed outside the applicant's frontage. In our opinion, this permit would be in violation of the town's driveway regulations. 2, the driveway as planned is adjacent to registered wetlands, including the Nessenkeg Brook, and there are environmental and drainage concerns due to the change in terrain and trees being cleared. I've witnessed flooding in the area and concerned that there is no drainage study as part of this plan. The land for Thornton Road extension was dedicated to the public with the recording of Plan 18490 in 1988. Since this land is considered public and abuts multiple properties, we feel any driveway or access road construction plan should be reviewed by the Town of Londonderry Planning Board and include public hearing. I've maintained part of the extension land for over 28 years. I have an irrigation system installed on part of it. And there's been a lot of history with this issue. And prior to the driveway permit being submitted, it was indicated to us by the town officials that any road or driveway construction would require a plan and include public hearings. However, I found out about the permit when a logging company came on site to evaluate the road work a few weeks ago. I urge the town council to request the town to deny or revoke the driveway permit and recommend this plan be submitted through the Town of Londonderry Planning Board. This is a very complex matter, and it should not be hidden away by the use of the driveway permit. I can answer any questions now or allow my neighbor to speak.
Sir, would you like to address this as well?
Both John and I received an email on Tuesday, May 17, 2022, from Town Manager Michael Malaguti. It says, Thornton Road Extension was dedicated to the public with recording of plan number 18490 in 1988. However, because there has been no public acceptance of the road, it is not a public way that the town is responsible for or has jurisdiction over. And in line 2, it says, it appears to us that Thornton Road Extension can likely be improved by Mr. Shark at his own cost, and that he can use for access. It is not necessary for us to answer this question definitively. However, because even if Thornton Road Extension is being wrongfully used or improved, it does no legal harm to the town or its interests. In other words, it is a private dispute. The problem I have with this is that the town is saying that it doesn't have jurisdiction over this small piece of property. And also, the town is saying this is a private dispute between John, myself, and the Shuck family. And when it comes to a permit, to look up on the town of Derry to see if there's an application for a driveway permit, I didn't see one. So I went to RSA 23613, which is an application for a driveway permit, and that's a state regulation. On line 6, it says, as if this is the application, the person filling out the application, it says in line 6, I am the owner or duly authorized agent of the owner of the parcel upon which the driveway will be constructed. Not one of us own this small piece of property. So if nobody owns this property, why is someone allowed to put a driveway on it? That I don't understand.
Okay, so let's see if we can spend a little bit here dissecting this a little bit. I have some familiarity with this. I'm not completely brought up to speed on it yet. My understanding is that the town's attorney has reviewed this and has offered a point of view.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding is this has been in the works for a while. And first of all, I acknowledge that there are strong feelings on both sides of this dispute. This is something that the town's attorney, the current town council, has looked at. It's something that I independently looked at. As you know, Mr. Chairman, I am also an attorney. And we arrived at the same place independently. And that is that it is correct that this is shown on a subdivision plan as part of Thornton Road. And it indicates on that plan that the temporary cul-de-sac will go away, quote, when Thornton Road is extended and accepted by the town. I agree that there has been a dedication of Thornton Road, the extension to the town, but we don't have an acceptance. And the case law is very, very clear on this. There are cases going back hundreds of years, and it's one of those areas in New Hampshire, it's a little bit unusual. There are actually many cases addressing these issues. And these cases make it clear that there's a recipe to get to a public way. And it's not enough to have just dedication, you also have to have acceptance. The town's position is that this is a dedicated but not accepted right-of-way. If we're correct about that, it is possible that the gentleman who addressed you tonight both own to the center line of that right-of-way. I think that's where you would regard your property line as existing today. There is a case, it's called the Duchesne case, that very clearly stands for the idea that a dedicated but not yet accepted right-of-way can be improved at Mr. Shook's cost. It could be that we're wrong about that, but as was pointed out, the town doesn't have an interest here that is at issue and is not accustomed to wading into private disputes, even if we might want it to go one way or the other. Highlighted behind you, Mr. Chairman, is a plan, and it is a plan and profile for the contemplated driveway. And by the way, I'm referring to this as a driveway. That's the best word that we can use to describe this. It's not a public way, but we are processing this as a driveway permit because that's how we address curb cuts into existing town rights-of-way. You can see that there is a highlighted portion up there, and what that highlighted portion is the 13 feet, the outermost 13 feet of the temporary cul-de-sac at the end of what is currently Thornton Road. That's the town's interests in this matter. And what is our interest in that? It's making sure that the curb cut is done to town spec, that there is sufficient surety so that if they should do something that degrades that we can restore it at the applicant's expense. And so I put that before you just to illustrate how narrow the town's interest is in this. I recognize, again, that there are differing points of view here. Attorney Ramsdell has looked at this. I have looked at this. This is what the cases tell us. And it's my job to report to the council and to these gentlemen that that's the town's position.
And so let me see if I can play this back so that I understand it.
Yeah, it is.
So what I'm hearing is that, and I'm not offering any, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not offering any opinions. I did sit on the planning board for 10 years. My understanding of what you just told me is that there was a subdivision plan. As part of that subdivision plan, there was a right-of-way here, yet since the town council controls roads, no vote was ever taken to accept that road.
That is precisely correct. It is a paper street.
So as far as the town council is concerned, the town council can close a road, can open a road, and has jurisdiction over roads.
That's correct.
But if we never accepted the road, as far as the town council is concerned, the road doesn't exist.
That's correct.
What you also said is that there may be a legal argument that the people who abut that current right-of-way, I'll just call it a right-of-way because I don't know what else to call it, and it's 13 feet, that they may, each of them may own 6.5 feet. I'm just using that as an example.
That's possible.
That's possible. So if I'm hearing all that, what I'm hearing is that the people from High Range Road are saying, we want access to the back of our lot. This is a approved right-of-way. We want a driveway permit.
Correct.
Our only responsibility in the driveway permit is that it doesn't break up and the water drains correctly.
I have John Trotter here, but
He's shaking his head yes.
That sounds right to me.
So when they say this is a private matter. What it's saying is that, and gentlemen, I'll try to explain this the best I can, is that a land use attorney should probably be hired to talk to whomever is trying to do this, and that they should have a conversation.
That's correct. And I can tell you, I've talked with Mr. Shook's attorney and said, hey, there are people who say that they have a claim here. He assured me, and again, take it for what it's worth, but he assured me that it's not in their interest for them to mobilize a crew and start cutting in a road just for these gentlemen to go and get an injunction and shut it down. That now, as I communicated to them, if there's going to be a dispute about this, a legal dispute about this, now is the time for them to bring it forward. The town is not going to be asserting an interest in that litigation.
So basically what Mr. Malaguti is saying is he's saying that you should seek legal counsel, you should, and you should take your case to them with, and everything we're talking about here is public information. And ask them to engage with whomever is the Schruck's attorney, and that they should have a conversation. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so I am seeking legal advice on this and do have counsel. My concern here is that the vehicle being used is this driveway permit. So I was never notified until when the logging company came a few weeks ago. The town's been, I've had conversations with the town since last year. They knew we were concerned about this. They've been reviewing the driveway permit since January. So I'm now in a point where I don't even know if the driveway permit's been issued. There's construction could start any day now, and I'm looking to assert my rights at the claim of the land. So I just want to pause. The driveway is not the right vehicle for this to happen. This is affecting 3 properties. It's going over public land. It should go through the planning board.
Neither Attorney Ramsdale nor I believe that there is planning board jurisdiction here, Mr. Chairman.
And the meeting I had with Mr. Ramsdale, the information we got after that meeting was that there could not be any road constructed without a public hearing.
So let me ask you.
And I have that through email.
Did we issue a driveway permit?
No, I don't believe any driveway permit is issued.
Okay, so is the applicant asking for a driveway permit to be issued by a certain time? Have they
No,
said we
in
need it
my-
by July 1st? I'm just making updates.
Yeah, I mean, John would be better able to talk to the timeframe expectations, but what I can tell you is that they value a final result more than they value speed, which is what I was alluding to earlier.
Understood.
They're not
So
going to rush this through just to rush it through.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
The logging company indicated that there were permits in place, and he was looking to do the work.
How to say this delicately? You can't always trust what loggers tell you.
No, understood.
Okay, so this is the gentleman who's in charge of the driveway permits. His name is John Trottier. He's the head of
Yeah,
engineering.
he was in the meeting with
So,
Ramsdale.
John, where are we at?
So where we're at, John, I would be issuing them an excavation permit to work within that highlighted area as indicated. So when the Shooks had approached me wanting to use that as access for their pasture out back, I says, the mechanism to make sure that you get your site distance, you're doing your drainage, follow our driveway regulations. So that's basically what they've done.
Now, there is,
They followed our driveway regulations, looking at the site distance, the drainage, and like I say, the next step would be for me to issue a permit for them to work within that 13 feet.
So
within the
knowing
town's
that these
right-of-way.
folks believe that there's a dispute, have we run into that before? How do we manage that? Or have we not run into this before?
I mean,
Usually a
this is-
driveway is on your own property. This goes outside of his property. And that's why I don't think this is the right
I
approach for this.
understand. Have you run into a dispute like this before?
No, for instance, Sunnycrest, John, has a similar driveway access off of Preserve.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I guess what the residents are looking for is do they have ample time to be able to engage private counsel and have a conversation?
I'm
I'm assuming, I'm not trying to answer for you, but I'm asking. Sir, just 1 second, please.
I'm certainly happy to try to work with the other side to forbear. As I said, I think they see their interest in making sure that they're not surprised by a lawsuit as this is happening. What I will say is this. Mr. Shook is asserting a property right as well that needs to be balanced against these
That's why I
gentlemen's
want the two attorneys to talk
property
to
right.
each other.
And if I were to just say, no, we're not, we're not going to issue a driveway permit, because I like these guys better than I like Mr. Shook, or vice versa. There's a property interest at stake. If you do that without a good basis, that can lead to liability for the town. And so I want us to be careful. Yes, I will
Well,
absolutely try to assert,
Well, all I'm saying is can we try to get parties together
I'm happy to.
and figure out how they all work together?
Yes.
I don't want us to take any stake in it. I just want to see if we can get all the parties together. That's all.
And again, we had no notification from the property owner, from the property owner's lawyer, or from the town.
I understand.
And our ask, I would love to keep this out of the courts because it's going to be expensive for both parties. My suggestion is let's go through the planning board. Let's have public hearings. We can voice our concerns. We can talk about the drainage issues.
That's something someone smarter than me to answer, but it's what I did, in the time I served on the planning board, I always found that if we could get the parties together,
Okay.
there was a better resolution for them to talk to each other than for us to preside over it.
Does the council have the ability to, because this is public land, to have this issue go through the planning board as opposed to driveway
I
permit?
don't believe we do. I don't believe we have any assertion to do that.
Can we ask questions?
So if these gentlemen are finished, I'm happy to entertain additional public comment.
I
Yes.
think, John, Mr. Shook? Mr. Shook is here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Mr. Shuck, just give me 1 second. I'll allow this nice lady here to ask a question. You can come up to the podium. I just need a name and address, please.
It's Julia Broder, 27 Thornton.
Thank you.
I don't understand how this can even be considered a driveway permit when, can I use the board?
Sure.
You're saying this is the only land in question, but it's this section here that leads to Shuck's property, which is on this side, abutting a stream, Nessun Cave Brook, but it's this section here that they're gonna be clearing to get to their section here. None of this is on Shuck's property.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the question. I mean, I do, one thing I do know about New Hampshire is that, the land use laws in the state are very strong towards access and ownership of property, but that's for land use attorneys to answer better than I can. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 100% accurate. I mean, I certainly don't dispute that that's the land that's at issue between these parties. It's just that the town doesn't have a legal interest
So
at
in other
stake.
words, we never took claim to it, so it's not our property.
I understand, but I'm hoping that the town can not use the driveway excuse to kind of shield this and bring it more into the open because it's affecting residents. And I would hope the town would watch after our interest as
Well,
well.
I think by encouraging you all to get together and talk, I think that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I'm open to any idea from the council or anything, but I think what we're trying to do is get you all in the same room so you can work something out.
We don't understand why what they're considering a driveway would go and dead end in a stream. It can't cross the stream for the pastures. So there's just a section where he's dead-ended there. And that stream affects everybody downstream as well. Nessun Cave Brook goes all the way down into Massachusetts.
So there's very strict wetlands ordinances and
Exactly.
mitigation for the state and everything that they would have to adhere to, but that would be all part of the permitting process.
But
And that-
they're
I
only
don't think
doing the
that's not being
driveway.
reviewed on this because,
Nothing
as he
is
said,
being
they're only
reviewed.
reviewing the section that the town has an interest in. The rest of the construction is not being reviewed by the wetlands.
Because of the age of this, I believe John would back me up on this, because of the age of this subdivision, there is not a conservation overlay.
You're right, it's grandfathered.
Nessun
But
Cave
there's
Brook is a
registered wetlands.
perennial,
Yeah.
is a perennial stream, according to your town website.
It's not that there isn't a concern there. It's just that it's a state concern, not a town concern.
Okay. So, all right, I'm gonna
Now,
let Mr.
let me say this, Mr. Chairman. If we got notice that there was a wetlands violation out there, we work cooperatively with the state to make sure that even if there may not be town jurisdiction, that is addressed at the state level. In fact, there's one a separate one that we're looking at right now. I know this is difficult to hear, but the whole reason that, in addition to dedication, acceptance is also required is to prevent the town from becoming financially responsible for roads that it doesn't want to take care of.
So if they're not going to take care of it and you're not going to have any responsibility for it, who maintains that gravel driveway? And what if a tree falls and all of that? It's still public land then. You're saying it's an access road then to their property.
So it's two different things. If they, for example, if they were building a subdivision behind you and they were building homes and they were doing that, that would go through the planning board. And then.
But that's what this is going to be doing.
Well, I don't know that. What they're asking for is access to the back of their property. I mean, that's what they're asking for.
Right, there may be additional steps that do trigger planning board review, but
And if they do go to planning board review, as an abutter, you will be notified, you will be part of the process, there will be public hearings.
But in this case,
But they have not filed a plan for that.
they're clearing trees, they're excavating in the same area right now without having to notify us. And
Are they
that's wrong.
excavating and clearing trees now?
In order to do
If
this.
To implement that plan,
So
they
it
will.
hasn't happened yet.
It has not.
Okay, so why don't we, Mr. Shuck is here, why don't we
We'll-
hear from,
we'll
why don't we
let
hear
him-
from
let him
him?
comment.
And let's see if we can, let's see if we can help, get to a common ground. Mr. Shuck? Mr. Shuck, would you like to sit or would you like to stand?
I'll try standing for a little bit. As you know, I struggle with my health.
I understand, sir. So I just need your full name and address, please.
I'm Jerry Shuck, currently living at 164 Millway in Barnstable, Mass. Live there. My wife and I moved there because her father had to put him in a nursing home, and we're taking care of him for now.
Thank you, sir. So what I think these folks are looking for is to have a resolution, and it sounds like they want to get together and talk.
Okay, first of all, we have not done any work on that.
I understand.
I'm sorry that Dorman misspoke when he went out there.
Okay.
But we have to have these workers go out and look and see. I'm trying to come up with a price in order to put a contract together.
Okay.
That, as far as this right-of-way goes, once it's improved by us at October Farm, by the way, everyone, that is 24 acres of farm.
Yes, sir.
And has been for 120 years, beyond that. So what we're wanting to do is have access. We're going to wetlands. We're defining the area, the soil tests. The engineers have been out there. They've been accosted by it. That's okay. They're going to get it all done. Surveyed where all the wetlands are. I assure you, we will have the proper permits to go across. We approached the neighbors well over a year ago, and we've been to conservation, we've been to ag, we've been to forestry, we've been everywhere trying to do this the proper way.
So you've been to state DES.
We have been everywhere. And we have letters from people as how we would go about doing this. Bedford Engineering is the engineers in charge of this, laying this whole thing out. And once that road is accepted, again, a road, whatever you want to call it, byway, October Farm, us, is now responsible for maintaining that road. If a tree falls down, it's on our nickel to clean it up.
Okay, so Mr. Shuck, are you willing to have your attorney counsel sit down with their representation? and
He's
see if we-
offered. He's
if we
offered
can-
already.
If we can see if we can work through a resolution. or
Absolutely.
You all together can work through a resolution. not
It's
the town.
Morgan Hollis, well-known land attorney, probably one of the best in the state, known for that. And absolutely, we're willing to sit down and talk with anybody.
Is that
And we
acceptable?
will not, we know we do not have a permit. I don't have a bond. I could post a bond tomorrow. Been waiting, and we haven't done a thing out there other than, we're not trespassing. We've been accused of that. We are not. We're staying within those bounds and laying out stakes and trying to get it all defined.
Okay, so I'm going to let Mr.
We did have a meeting over a year ago, and when he approached us, he wanted to build his access road without going through the town at all. So my neighbor and Tim and I said we were not on board with that. We were concerned on the wetlands, the exact same concerns we have here. Ever since then, no communication from him at all. I've
well,
seen
the-
him out there. I've asked him what his plans are, and he has given me no information. If he's had his lawyer and has been trying to solve this, he has not reached out to us at all.
So I think we're all in the same room right now, so let's see if we can all,
We've been more than willing to work this through for a long time.
okay. Well, I'm not gonna dispute whether who
Okay.
did what or anything else. I'm not
Neither
here
am
to
I.
do that.
I'm not gonna call people names.
So, I know Mr. Hollis myself, so if, if, once you have I'll be happy to call him, if you would like me to, I'd be happy to do that as a, representative of the, as a resident of the community, even though I am a town councilor all the time. But I'm happy, I want to see you all get together and be able to work together. That's generally the best way to resolve these things.
So I have an attorney who will contact that attorney as well. What I want is assurance that they're not going to start construction and no permit will get issued until we have a chance to.
Mr.
Have we
Schruck,
given you that assurance? We will not?
Mr. Schruck, will you wait for their attorney to contact you before you do anything?
In a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna wait next year.
So can you all get together in the next, 30 days and talk to each other?
The conversation will happen within 30 days, yes.
Will happen between the attorneys.
Between the attorneys?
Yeah,
And I hope that all of you talk to each other too,
we can do that. Stop the name calling, we can do it.
right? I mean, I'm sorry we can't be of any further assistance. We're just being advised that we're not
appreciate
the
that.
landowner.
And I would recommend you review the driveway permit, because building something like that outside of your property, affecting multiple things with zero notification, no public hearings is not acceptable.
We'll absolutely take a look at it.
Thank you.
You're very
Now,
welcome.
we may start running cattle on the back of that farm.
Well, you know what, that's.
Okay, I just don't want
that's
anybody
a
to get all
different
up.
conversation.
I don't want anybody to get all upset about that, but that's the farm.
I'm happy with the fine roofs. I had no issue with that. The meeting we had with the town attorney, there is an access road, a fire road, an old logging road, that they have full access to the property, and it was recommended by the town manager at that time and the attorney that he utilize that to access the field back without
Okay.
disturbing the
All right, well,
wetlands.
you guys will figure that out.
Yeah, thank you.
The attorneys will.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming down, and thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a town matter to handle in public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the council before I handle the town matter? I do. Yes, ma'am. You got, if you could come up, please.
And I just have questions. No, the taxes is fine. We'll be happy about that. But I still got to pay the tax. I don't know if I get to it. I'm coming. So it's Christmas. My name is Joan Schmillers. I live at 38 South Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. I taught Jim's boy Jake. I taught Deb's son John, and same, right? And I taught Joe Green's kid Joey. And I never taught your child, but I was glad to see that you were a veteran, because my husband was also. He's up at Bosco One now. Died very young, too young. I have questions because I've never asked enough questions. Living here 43 years, I've heard you're going to build some more condos in Londonderry. Is it this year?
Me personally?
No, the whole thing. But you had to sign for it, right?
Nope. That's the planning board. That's the planning board.
That's the planning board. And you know how many are going up?
Condos. I don't have a read on them. Yes, Deb.
I think you're talking about Gilchrist?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's talking about Gilchrist Road, the potential land buy down there with,
So
Mazziolo?
that may or may not happen at this
Oh,
point.
so it's
So
questionable.
there's nothing in writing that says we're building anything there right now.
Okay, and the town has savings, the town council, right?
Well, we
have
we don't have a savings account. We have something we call the undesignated fund balance, which is our emergency account.
Okay, and that's taxpayers' dollars, correct?
They're all taxpayer
I
dollars.
figured. So if I need a loan, I go to you? Okay.
Well, if you need a personal loan, I'd be happy to accommodate you.
God bless you. Well, you know, I do get the feeling in this town, as when I was young, it welcomed me with open arms. And I came here in April 19th, 1979, 43 years ago. And I paid taxes to you for 43 years, and I've never been smart enough to come to these town council meetings, and I should.
It's the best entertainment in town.
I'm starting to believe it. And I don't want to not make it entertainment, so I'll keep trying to make jokes over here. But But I have looked at other towns and what they give the elderly and what they give the veterans. And you guys are going to help the veterans more, and I'm thanking you for that.
You're
Because
welcome.
I think that's probably the most dedicated Americans we have are our veterans. And when I used to teach school, we used to do everything for the Veterans Day. I used to have people to come in there and do it. So I want to thank you for every little 5 cents you can give the veterans. And I just want to know, so I've got to go to the planning board and question the number of condos that are going to come in.
Well, there's been no plan for that particular piece of property, so there's nothing being built right now.
Okay, so it's all hearsay.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, it's not necessarily hearsay. It's something that was discussed on the ballot and that we really don't know whether or not the developer is moving forward or not.
So I know there are a lot of people who are concerned in town about this particular matter. It was a narrow margin that this passed by in March. There is nothing on paper or otherwise right now that says whether anything at all is going in there. We are working through some issues with the potential developer. But what I've said to the folks at the Nevins who have an interest in what's going on there, and anyone else really who's asked is,
I do, because they say the school taxes are what bothers us. And if, what kind of a condo system is it? Is for old folks like me, they built 300 of those that I can't afford to go in anymore, but others.
I have no idea what might
Yeah.
or might not go in there, but what the commitment that I've made is it's not going to be a surprise when we're discussing it either here or somewhere else.
Thank you.
There will be plenty of notice and opportunity to participate.
Because if it's people with school kids, we're gonna need another school.
Who knows what form it might take or might not take. And again, as we went through this process in budget season, this is a very unusual transaction. There's any number of reasons why it might just not be able to happen. It might happen. Who knows?
I've been here long enough to know it's probably gonna happen.
Well, you
Might
know what they told them
choose
earlier, don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
No, I won't. Not here. I won't never think of that.
So where,
I taught school for 33 years.
so where did you, which school did you teach at?
I taught at South School for 14 years, middle school for 11.
Fantastic.
And I taught at a Mohawk school I taught at St. Regis Mohawk School in New York State, in Hogansburg, New York, because I have Mohawk blood. And maybe that's why I'm mad at myself, because the Mohawks would have come to this council more often. And then, I'm not kidding, sir, you don't mess with us. And then I taught in Newington, Connecticut for my husband's hometown for 2 years. And then I taught in Downtown, Pennsylvania for 4.
Fantastic.
And I made so little money here, I couldn't afford to buy my school teachers. So my only retirement is from the 25 years here. But I love teaching, no matter where I went. And that was
Fantastic.
wrong, because I got a BS plus, MS plus 30. And I still didn't make any money, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Keep me in mind. Keep me educated on what's happening in Londonderry.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in public comment. I'm going to move to we have an HVAC issue we have to take care of. I'll just move to that right now. Dave, why don't we just handle that right now? And then if anyone else wants to come up, we'll deal with that then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Dave Wally. I serve as your Director of Public Works and Municipal Facilities. I come to you before you tonight because we have a situation actually that developed late last week at the library where the brains, if you will, that oversee that building, the HVAC unit, went down. It crashed. It is old, it's antiquated, it's non-replaceable, so they had no ventilation in their building. Aaron Maitland contacted their current HVAC contractor to see what they could do about that and replace it and solicited a price. As you know, previously I had been discussing this various scenario that I had concerns about this facility because of our antiquated or outdated software, if you will. Theirs was even older than that. By Friday morning, we were able to find a mothballed unit that they were able to bring down and put in place to get them back on their feet. I had contacted the company that I had previously been discussing about our situation here, who was the actual original installer of our software that runs this facility. More broad discussions, even recently, as Deb probably remembers, at the Energy task force meeting, we talked about that, about getting a single-user platform that would be able to manage all of these facilities in a one-stop shop type format, as opposed to having situations like they ran into at the police department that they found where they wind up in a locked out of their own system in a proprietary mode. I had previously gotten 2 prices for this building. I started to solicit a third. This is back in late fall, November timeframe. The third vendor that I had coming in was astronomically high, way off the charts. Again, found out that they were, because what that would have done was put us in a proprietary mode. So I kind of shelved the discussion for a while. We had more discussions with the Energy Task Force about this effort. And so when I had the vendor that currently can help us with our software here looked at their facility, they said they absolutely can do something, and they provided a quote, as it turns out, lower than their current HVAC provider over there. So why am I here if this is a library issue? If they go with their higher and current HVAC company, their lead time on parts and equipment is like 4 to 6 weeks. The one that they would prefer to go with, the one that I was speaking to about getting into this facility, they can get them within 1 to 2 weeks. So I started to entertain the idea of have prices gone up since November, in which, of course, we found out that they have. They assured me that if they were going to do the library, if they were the selected vendor through their board to do the library, that they would hold our prices because they would be able to order everything all at the same time. So if we were going to end up circling back to them later on down the line, our prices would go up. So essentially, they are an emergency situation that they are moving forward on. They will have a third price likely by tomorrow. It is not expected to beat the lower price, and they will likely be going with that platform. So all I came here tonight was basically to inform you of that. Just be transparent in things that are moving rather quickly. And because I had previously discussed this, that this could be a potential issue in this facility, I thought it was relevant to bring it here tonight, because if they do decide to go that path, I would like to also enter into that idea that we could order our equipment for this building at the savings that we were looking at back in November. I also discussed with them the ability to migrate other systems that are in town to that platform so that we would have a single platform, as they demonstrated to us like they do with Portsmouth right now. They have all the city buildings in Portsmouth, and they are, more importantly, a state-approved contract vendor. They are on the state bid pricing. They have all of the state's courthouse systems is their contract. There are 3 vendors for the state. They have a lot of buildings throughout the state, but they are the larger one that has upwards of 50 to 60 buildings that they oversee for the state. So they're a very competent, independent company that, if we wanted to migrate other systems like the one that the PD invested in last year, that is something that we could also possibly migrate, and we would have 3 of our 5 largest buildings on this platform. So we're talking about the building management systems that run it, not your rooftop units, not your compressors and things like that, but the thing that makes it talk to itself and also gives us the ability to program it. So for example, tonight we came in here for the first meeting. It was very warm because I've explained to you before how we program these settings. So we turn this on, they lower it and crank it down. It's freezing. We have some people that came in, they're freezing, so now I'm over here toying with it. Things like that can be taken out a lot easier with the type of system that I'm talking about. So
if I could just amplify why Dave and I talked about this today, and why I think it makes some sense and the council should consider it, is because this is part of a larger effort to improve energy efficiency, as you know, Councilor Paul. And one of the examples Dave gave me was, we're working with old technology here. You can't necessarily program for holidays or program for days where we would ordinarily be in the building, but because it's a snowstorm or a special, something, it can't be programmed. And so this is just a lot smarter. It gets everything working a little bit more together at a cost savings to the taxpayer.
Okay, questions?
No, I think it's a great idea. We talked about it, and we thought that this would be cost-effective in the long run. May cost a little bit more upfront, but in the long run, it definitely would save the town finances in the end.
Yeah,
that's
again,
a great
it's something
idea.
that I was going to be coming back to. I did put a good deal of time in it in the late fall, looking at it. was probably going to go out to a larger bid style process. But again, I had already vetted it quite thoroughly, and where they found themselves in an emergency situation and they're moving forward, it didn't take long for me to get up to speed, dust off what I had found out previously, and I think that that's a good decision for the town to move in this matter, so.
Okay.
So all we need from the council tonight is a consensus, and then we'll be back to you with an order at some point in the future.
We have a consensus to proceed?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are still in public comment. Is there anyone else who wants to address the council, or else I'm going to move out of public comment? Yes, sir.
This is about items not on the agenda, right?
Right, it's
Yeah.
about things that are not on the agenda.
Right. Okay, so
Name and address, please, sir.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. Just very briefly, the lady that spoke before me was concerned about the possible development on Gilchrist, South Gilchrist. And my question is, I don't know if you know it or not, whether soil sampling has been done on that, which would have to be done first to determine whether the property can be used or not. Does anyone know if that has taken place?
There's been no plan put in front of us, so I'm sure there's been no HIS or soil testing done yet.
And there's no intention of doing
Did you guys
that?
do it from conservation?
Conservation has done soil testing,
Well,
but we don't have reports. DES is doing it.
okay,
It's
so,
a three-phase project, and we're in phase 2.
okay. So apparently conservation is doing, and we were unaware.
And is that being paid for with taxpayer money?
Nope, we received a grant.
Well,
Good.
there, I got very quick answers tonight.
Huh? That's good, yeah, very quick.
It was almost like she was reading my mind.
Yeah, but we did get money from the state for the Brady Sullivan that dumped contamination up to the airport. We got that money. Do we still have that money, and do we intend to use that for something like this?
I don't know, but we'll look into it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm coming into this conversation late, but I think he's talking about 35 Gilchrist again, based on.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but
So-
he's also talking about land, well, we already answered the question on Gilchrist. What he's looking for is the money that we have from Brady Sullivan,
Yep.
and I'm not sure where we stand on that, and we can look into that.
Yeah, it was used to fund its original purpose.
Oh,
It has already been used?
Yes, is my understanding.
For what use?
For a Phase 1 environmental. My understanding is that there is additional environmental work that may or may not be done, depending on what's going to be done on that site.
So
Certainly,
that was used for Gilchrist already?
yes, there's a 200-page Phase 1 environmental survey that was done. My understanding is with that mitigation money from Brady Sullivan doing something that it shouldn't have done elsewhere in town.
and that was for the stuff that's up by the Irving station at the airport.
Correct.
Not on Gilchrist.
That's exactly right.
Right, and the Gilchrist HIS and studies and everything are being done by a grant by the Conservation Commission.
I believe there is additional work that's being done
Yes.
at that level.
They just confirmed that. Okay.
Okay,
Anything
thank
else?
you.
Thank you.
Were those
Okay.
funds exhausted?
I don't know. I can get you that information.
Thank you.
All right, folks, public comment is now closed. I'll take a motion to open the public hearing.
So move?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, public hearing, ordinance 2022-03, an amendment to the Londonderry zoning ordinance, section 4.2.1.4, relative to keeping poultry in an AR1 district, continued from May 23rd. Okay, as I recall, Laura's here. Okay, so as I recall, we continued this mainly over some questions around enforcement, and was the main issues. Were there other issues around this that I don't remember? Do we need Laura to come up?
Well, I'm happy, yes, I mean, Laura,
She's right there.
frankly, knows a lot more about this than I do. I can tell you that I watched the hearing and heard some of the council's concerns, and, you know, having worked in this area, and by the way, Nick Codner is Nick here? Yeah. Nick Codner, the chief building inspector in charge of the code enforcement function, is here as well.
Yeah, and I've also heard through the rumor mill that the animal control officer has assisted at times.
Yes, I know that the Deputy Chief Bernard and Chief Hart are here. Deputy Chief Bernard provided me with a printout of a number of calls that they've responded to over the years involving conflict between chickens and dogs, chickens and people, dogs and people, but really focused on chickens. And so, yes, I mean, they've had a number of calls that they've responded to. One of the council's, what I heard the council saying was, well, should we make this a law enforcement function? I think the deputy chief provided me with some feedback on that I think the council should hear because I agree with it. So I don't know in what order the council wants to take this. I can set the scene for how enforcement works in Londonderry if you'd like, and then invite him to participate or respond to specific questions.
You want to set the scene first?
Yeah, let's set the scene.
Okay, let's set the scene.
So the question was, and understand that what we're talking about here is this either is or isn't going to be written into the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is something where, believe it or not, if you violate the zoning ordinance, it can constitute a crime under New Hampshire law. That's RSA 676-17. Violating the zoning ordinance also gives rise to, and there are different ways that this can be collected. It could either be through a criminal proceeding or it could be through some other kind of proceeding. A $275 a day for a first offense and a $550 a day for a second offense civil fine. And that is after written notice of the violation. There's nothing in the statute that talks about how many days have to pass before that fine begins to accrue. But I think it's fair not to hand somebody written notice and then start accruing a $275 a day or $550 a day fine. There should theoretically, unless it's a health or a safety hazard, be some period of time to come into compliance before we go to court and try to collect that fine. I am not suggesting that we should, in fact, I'm suggesting we should not enforce in general the zoning ordinance, but very specifically the chicken ordinance by charging people with crimes. I think that is not something that we want to do for reasons that I'm happy to discuss if somebody disagrees with me. There is always the option, if we have a violation of a zoning ordinance, to just hand it off to the attorney and to go to court and to secure an injunction. Take it from me, there is nothing fast about the legal process. You can expect to wait far longer than you believe you should ever have to wait. And so for that reason, we don't just hand violations like this off to an attorney as a matter of course, unless there's just a refusal to come into compliance. Our process is, and this is something that the former town manager worked on, and I agree with him on, which is that we should not just be sending people letters notifying them that they're in violation of the zoning ordinance and that failure to comply with the zoning ordinance is going to give rise to fees and fines. We should be either visiting them or sending them a courtesy letter to make sure that they know what the standard is that's being violated and that we give them guidance and assist them to come into compliance. Obviously, there are exceptions to this in egregious cases, which I'm happy to discuss. That initial outreach is followed by a notice of violation, and the notice of violation generally says you have 30 days to come into compliance or we're going to take the next step. And it then can be handed off either to the attorney or we could go by way of what's called the local land use citation route. This is something new that code enforcement and I have been working on. It's a way to make sure that there's effective, strong enforcement, but it doesn't require us to hire an attorney and spend thousands of dollars on legal fees through a slow process that's going to frustrate us and it's going to frustrate pretty much everybody. That entails written notice to the violator. It has to be observed again by the code enforcement officer, so the condition of violation has to be observed again. And then they are served with a summons that they can either answer by mail or that they must answer by mail, and it gives them 30 days to either plead guilty and pay the fine or to plead not guilty and to contest it in court. And that is, we've found in its early stages to be a fairly effective tool. And so what I would say is this. I think that the code enforcement process, while I heard concerns expressed that enforcement should, if the council's going to do this, and I don't express an opinion one way or the other, we want to make sure that that we have our enforcement house in order as well. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I suggest to you that the enforcement house is very much in order, that we have all the tools that we need to tailor to the nature of the violation. I don't advise that you write into the chicken ordinance specific enforcement mechanisms or consequences for violations. What's the reason for that? Typically, we don't write such enforcement measures into the drainage ordinance or the conservation overlay ordinance. We have a single enforcement mechanism that exists at the end of the zoning ordinance, which basically says all available state laws can be used to enforce this ordinance. I suggest to you that that's more than sufficient to do the trick here. Lastly, again, I think you should hear from the deputy chief because his points were well taken by me. This is not necessarily something where I see a benefit to having a law enforcement officer involved. Yes, people react one way when somebody with a gun and a badge shows up, but we do have a part-time animal control officer. I can tell you that he's plenty busy with dogs, as you've heard recently, and I think that the code enforcement process is much more better equipped to deal with these issues.
Deputy Chief?
Good afternoon, Deputy Chief Kim Bernard. Thank you. That was quite the rundown that Mike gave us. In the email that I had received from Town Manager Malaguti, he was asking about some input. And while we do have chicken calls on occasion, some of the chicken calls that we do handle are with regards to being loose and then dog issues that follow. Just so everybody's clear here, I don't mind chickens. I had lots of them. They were great, and I had fun. But I was the only one that cleaned them in my house. The kids never helped. It was my job. But I'm just going to make some comments to them about things that we could deal with from the law enforcement side. As far as the enforcement action, I think it is appropriate if code enforcement, I don't want to share any responsibilities or send them your way. But if that's the route that they choose to go, so be it. If it's an enforcement action that you guys are willing to change in the police department, we will help. We will do whatever it is to make this work for everybody. As town manager indicated, the animal control officer is doing 20 to 24 hours a week. Well said. He can barely keep up with what he has now on a part-time basis. We can't even get people to register dogs on time. So the enforcement action for that is very difficult for us at times to maintain that. Some of the chicken calls that we have gone to, that dogs have been in pens slaughtering chickens. We've had animal complaints about loose chickens in people's yards. I did watch the video that you had sent out. Town Manager Malaguti asked me to review it. Laura Gandia made a comment in there about the word nuisance. Now, I think it's very important that if we look into that, we define what that is, because there may be some people who love their chickens and don't find them to be a nuisance to themselves or their neighbors, but neighbors may find that to be a nuisance. If chickens do get loose and they roost on someone's farmer's porch in a brand-new house, we know what happens with chickens. They don't know boundaries. They don't know where the bathroom is. They do their business wherever they feel. And so as a homeowner who has frustration with that, we will deal with neighbor disputes. It will happen, just as we do with loose dogs and things of that nature. But if people can handle these things amongst themselves as neighbors, we won't really get involved. However, there does come a time where dogs do attack and kill chickens, and it's not because they don't know any better. It's because it's an instinctive thing that chickens do. They see a dog, they'll squat or they'll run, and then dogs give chase. They think it's a game or a toy. And unfortunately, there is a law in place that people may not like to hear, but a chicken owner has a right to defend their poultry. And if a dog is actively chasing them, harassing them, or attacking them, homeowners have the ability to take care of said problem with animal attacking their chickens. I'm trying to be very delicate of how I say that because there's some young children in the audience. So we do deal with those calls on occasion. And then with that, we also could deal with discharging of a firearm, if that does happen, within close proximity of another residence. So to reiterate some of these things, if the town chooses to do the enforcement action and amend it and bring the police into it, we will do as best as we can to help serve you folks in that regard. Bear in mind, again, as the town manager indicated, the animal control officer, Dave Carver, is very busy doing dog stuff. I tell you, I really did like having chickens. I didn't mind the rooster crowing at 4:15, and when I worked midnights, it didn't matter if it was 4:15, it was 2 in the afternoon, it was 11:30 after court. That thing would just go off whenever it wanted. So if everybody's all in favor for that stuff, we're neutral and we're detached. So that's my 2 cents on the chicken amendment.
And if I could just add, Mr. Chairman, that, the PD does take an active role in helping us out, standing by, from a safety standpoint when we're serving code enforcement paperwork sometimes. It's certainly not that they're unwilling to help. They are. What I'm telling you and what the deputy chief is telling you is we think that this is perhaps better within the wheelhouse of code enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, is there anything further? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If you would like to address the council on this ordinance only, now would be the time. Hi, Marty. How you doing?
Good. I watched the meeting last month.
Oh, it's Martin Sturgis.
Oh, I'm sorry. Martin Sturgis, 17 Wimbledon Drive.
Thanks, Marty. Good seeing you.
I watched the meeting last month, which a homeowner on West Road complained about chickens wandering into his yard, and he complained to his neighbor, and they basically told him to pound sand. And I find that very disturbing because it's going to lead to a lot of angry neighbors. So I was thinking about the problem, and I think what I'm looking at is that maybe if we solve the problem ahead of time, so we don't get into law enforcement and the constant complaining. I was looking through the ordinance. I looked through an ordinance that what I consider our sister city on the Cape, Falmouth, had another issue like this with chickens, and they came up with a set of rules and regulations that they're looking at just like we are. But anyway, I'd like to see that the chickens are fenced in, no free-range chickens running around. I know they don't go on the road sometimes, but sometimes they do. And, if I'm driving down the road and there's somebody behind me, that chicken's going to end up as a road pizza. And I'm not going to stop and cause an accident because of that. I think the setbacks should be increased from 25 to 50 feet. There's also the issue of the chicken coop in the run should be at least 100 feet from a well because of the manure management, or whether they're not managed at all, because you run into that issue. And also, the issue of salmonella problems with chickens. You also are doing a ordinance on water in the town from various surface contamination. Well, I consider chicken manure surface contamination, and I don't want it anywhere near my well. Hopefully, these people who have the chickens are following the USDA best practices for the manure management. And going one step further, I'd like to see if people decide to have a chicken, that's fine. Build a chicken coop, do the chicken run. But I'd like to see either the code enforcement officer, or I know the animal control officer is busy, but if they could pre-inspect that to make sure it meets town guidelines, so it doesn't end up that the neighbor has to call in the violation and create ill will between people. I think that way, if you set it up correctly at the beginning, is less likely to have problems later on. It may be a permitting process, I'm not sure how you would do that. And also, I know there are a lot of people who have them, but no grandfathering of old chicken coops. And I mean, I'd give them a reasonable amount of time to comply with the new rules and regulations, but then after that, everybody should be on the same playing field. In here, I did look up best practices for the USDA on chickens. It has there's like 50 pages of things of, how to handle chickens, make sure you're not tracking the stuff into your house, or, animals run through yards, that they don't track it into your yard and all this other stuff. So again, it all comes down to, I'm not totally opposed to it, but on the other hand, I bought a lot here. I didn't buy it to be next to a farm. And I'd like to make sure that it's controlled right from the beginning, that people comply with the rules and regulations, so we don't get into the nastiness of later on as people call in violations. And that's all I ask. And I can drop off some of this stuff too, Laura, about what Falmouth is doing and what the USDA recommends.
That'd be great. Thanks, Marty.
That's it. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Anyone else on this particular ordinance only? Yes, sir. Hi, sir. Just name and address, please.
My name is Daniel Arias. I'm on 33 West Road. I moved up here 2015 from Massachusetts. And the reason we came up here, up to New Hampshire, was because all our friends told us that you could actually enjoy the outdoors, have what you want to have as long as you meet the laws and everything. So when we bought a property, we have an acre lot. To my understanding, if you have a big enough yard, you could have the poultry. And that's why we settled into the property that we own. And little do I find out afterwards that I needed 2 acres. After all the paperwork was done and I was locked into the house, I can't have it.
So it's still Market Basket for you?
Pretty much. And, well, I have a few health issues, so I can have no proteins, no meats. I do a lot of eggs. I buy a lot of eggs. And figured if I could have my chickens in a run, can't get out, I don't think it's such a bad idea. If have a big enough area where they can be, doesn't bother nobody, I don't see the wrong in it. If it's not disturbing nobody, they're not getting loose. Dogs get loose all the time. Dog poop everywhere. We step on it. I deal with that all the time. The coyotes come in your yard. They poop in your yard. We're not doing nothing about them. So why is a chicken in a cage our problem? I think.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this particular ordinance only? He was up faster than you.
Well, I got a little more legs than him. How you doing? My name is Quentin Shack, 5 Dan Hill Road, Londonderry.
Hi.
We have a small petting farm over there. We've run hundreds of chickens. I think it's a great idea for people to have chickens on a small piece as long as they keep them in. I know my chickens. I have some that are free range. We have 15 to 20 acres, so I can let them do that because my neighbors are not close. If they were, I would have them in a pen because I know chickens can be destructive. I've had them go through my grandparents' flower beds, but as long as they're in a smaller contained area, I don't see any reason why anybody shouldn't have a couple chickens as long as they maintain them well, don't cause a nuisance, keep the manure cleaned. There's a lot of pluses to chickens. If you're gardening, the manure, you can compost it. It's a great thing, especially nowadays, having a few chickens. We all see the prices in the store going up. Having 6 hens in the backyard kind of gives you a peace of mind that, okay, I have my breakfast or dinner or whatever, because things get short in the stores sometime nowadays. Sometimes you go in there, there's no eggs or bread. But to be able to go out to the chicken coop, grab a couple eggs is a good thing, especially for the younger generations. It's a good learning experience for them. A lot of kids nowadays don't have that experience of raising something from a chick to a full-grown animal, getting something from that animal to learn a lot of the values of life that we've kind of lost over the years. But again, as long as they're maintained well, kept clean, not running around causing havoc and not causing trouble for everybody, because we all know how that is. We all have neighbors. We all want to keep the peace between everybody. But I mean, chickens are generally quiet. Just as Dan was saying, dogs bark all the time. Not really much to do that, stop that. As long as you don't have a rooster, hens are relatively quiet. I mean, you could have a couple hens in this room right now, and you probably wouldn't even notice them there, except for a few little clucks and clicks around. But that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, young man. Roger, how you doing?
I'm alive and well.
Fantastic.
Much as you can expect in life. My name is Roger Filio. I'm at 3 Hampshire Lane. I'm also an alternate member to the planning board. When I read in the paper, I noticed some discrepancies between what we were proposed and what had been vigorously discussed in the planning board, the outcome of what the ordinance would look like. And in my thinking, and listening to what went on then, that we were looking for an ordinance that said a minimum of, or a maximum of 12 chickens on 1 acre and a maximum of 6 turkeys. And also, we had engaged the planning board group, the permanent group, had talked to the agricultural departments, and we came up with a plan. Number of chickens, 10 square feet per chicken outside in an enclosed place. Not only enclosed on the sides, but on the top. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's what the ordinance came up with. And it said 25 feet from the back or the side lots, which is really adequate. So a lot of the things that were talked about have already been gone through by the state. And if you have the proper amount of footage per chicken and a proper amount of footage per turkeys, you know, you got a great deal. And as the gentleman before me said, people are losing track of where we're getting our food from, you know, and it is a good idea for children to see this. When I first moved here, there was no ordinance against it, and we had chickens, ducks, and rabbits. Rabbits are not good. They get out of anything you can try to contain them in, and then they march down the street and eat every single flower in your neighborhood. So rabbits are not good. Ducks don't do well with dogs in the neighborhood, so chickens and turkeys, they're really good. I won't spend too much more time, but all of the things that we made in that ordinance, which I assume you have pretty much the same way it came from the planning board, was approved or instigated by the agricultural department in the state of New Hampshire. And again, the gentleman that was here before, if you have a garden, you'll never have to worry about paying for fertilizer again. And it is the best type of fertilizer. And you should use it that way. That's the way for it to get out. The second thing is eggs. I buy 36 eggs at a time at Sam's Club. It used to be $3.60. Then it went to about $5. It is now $10.99. So if you need protein, you need to grow your own.
Thank you, Roger.
Pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Roger. Is there anyone else on this ordinance only? Yes, sir. Hi, sir. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name's Chris Bridges. I live at 4 Brookview Drive, where I've lived for the last 6 years. It's pretty late, so I'll cut to the point.
We'll be here for a long time if you want to hang around and watch government at work.
Thank you for the offer. Flatly, I condemn the treatment of chickens on battery farms. It's horrible the way these birds are treated. However, if you want to purchase eggs from free-range chickens, you're going to pay over $5 a dozen. Between that, supply chain issues, inflation, I think we have the right to be food secure in an ethical manner. Keeping chickens is also a way to respect the farm heritage of New Hampshire. Someone made a comment regarding chicken manure and its potential deleterious effects on the environment. I can go to any landscape store in the county and buy a bag of manure and do whatever I please with it. In fact, if I have chickens, I would take that manure and put it on my garden to grow the rest of my food. Furthermore, this comment regarding nuisance animals. The biggest nuisance animal on my property is my neighbor's cat. Comes over, kills the birds I feed in my backyard, drops its leavings around my garden, and stares at my windows to antagonize my cats.
Have you ever listened to George Carlin's piece about cats?
I've listened to a few of his.
So then you should appreciate that.
I'll take it under advisement.
According to
Thanks.
George.
Furthermore, just to support the safety of my family, I've heard comments about keeping the chickens well enclosed, and I agree with that. My neighbors shouldn't be subject to my birds just running free. However, I think that they should have the right to come out and free range under direct supervision. My dog has had Lyme disease. My mother-in-law has had Lyme disease. Many other dogs I know, and a couple of people have had Lyme disease. And chickens are the most effective, simple, ecologically responsible method to control ticks, in my opinion. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
I've been trying to get up here, but my legs don't work that fast. Hi, I'm Sharon Pekoski, and I'm at 2 Boyd Road. I have lived in Londonderry about 26, 27 years. The property that I now own is a little under 2 acres. I would like to have chickens. I have my grandkids come over. I have, and I want to be able to have chickens and the kids see them, lay eggs, collect the eggs. The tick thing is another one where you can supervise them. I agree that if you can have a few birds, have them enclosed. I don't think it should be an issue if you don't reach that 2-acre mark. The USDA says that eggs can be $1 per egg come the end of the year. I can't afford that. I'm a bartender. And I would just like the town to be aware that a lot of people need to have chickens for the economy. The economy is so bad. I went food shopping today. I spent $150 and I brought home nothing. And no eggs, because they were too expensive. So I hope that you'll let us have some chickens on our property as long as everyone's responsible and, no roosters with all the noise. And I'm responsible for my dog, and I'll be responsible for my chickens as well if I can have them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes? You did great. I heard
Ron
you.
Dunn, 12 Quincy Road. Most of the things that have already been said, I just want to add a couple more things. I'm in support of this. First off, chickens also help reduce our carbon footprint. They take a lot of kitchen waste out of the landfills, which also help us as a town. The composting also of the manure, and everyone's mentioned the rising cost of the eggs. Can help support a lot of families that are struggling right now. And I just say, don't let the bad chicken owners influence. There's a lot of good chicken owners in this room. Don't let them influence your decision. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting ready to, Jeff, sure, come on up. It's a public hearing.
I'm gonna go quick because most of my comments echo what's already been said.
Okay.
Juanita
Name it,
Alvarado, Auburn Road.
Thank you.
So I moved to Londonderry last year. We bought an acre and it came with a chicken coop. So we were I'm quite surprised to find that we weren't able to have chickens. There are, like they said, many benefits. The education, so teaching the children table to farm to table, waste reduction, and the nutrient-dense fertilizers. So the gentleman that spoke on May 23rd about his neighbors, it's unfortunate that his neighbors were disrespectful and not responsible chicken owners. But the proposed changes would address that, so the keeping them in the coop, the setbacks, the nuisance, would address all of the issues that he brought up. And then I guess the only other comment I have is to kind of compare it to dog owners, right? There are some really good dog owners and there's some bad owners. So the same is going to happen with chicken owners. There are going to be some that are good and some that are bad. So I don't think that we should all be punished for the few that aren't. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, yes? Name and address, please.
Mark Arredondo, 427 Mammoth Road.
Thank you.
With all that was said, I used to have chickens. I had the same situation. I bought a house here, just under 3/4 of an acre. It had a area for chickens, and then, yeah, it was a surprise when we couldn't have any. The only thing I would ask on top of, and I don't know what's already been proposed, but somebody said turkeys and chickens. I would think that quail would be added to that, since they have to be enclosed, and they're just like chickens, just you can confine them in a lot smaller space, and they have the same benefits. That's all.
Thank you. All right, folks, I'm going to bring this back to the council for deliberation. So, council, what do you want to do?
Well, I'm for it, so.
I think we should vote. I do like the idea of adding quail as well to the ordinance. I do have a question for the deputy chief, if I may. Sir, you had discussed the ACO for enforcement, and I'm not proposing moving away from code enforcement and transitioning to law enforcement. But can some of those duties, given the fact that you stated there was a high number of call volume with the ACO, can we include the conservation officer as well in some of that information or education of this enforcement, or is it something that just the ACO has to do?
Good question. I believe that may be out of the scope of what the conservation ranger is assigned to do in his daily duties. Should the town council look to amend or work with Attorney Malaguti on the enforcement side, ACO Carper would be the one to be designated with the chicken patrol, if you would. So we'll be glad to help out if that's what you guys choose to do.
Gotcha. And I'm not, Mr. Chair, I'm not proposing to do that, or Mr. Town Manager. I was just asking for.
Right. I think it's important that the council understand that, one of the benefits of having a sworn ACO and a sworn conservation ranger is they are available if during their day they have downtime to help out on a sporadic basis. I mean, I know that the conservation ranger will take an accident if he is out and about and needs to assist. Likewise for the ACO. So I think probably the deputy chief is correct. It is outside the scope of the conservation ranger's duties as currently conceived. However, I don't know LPD to say, not my job.
Of course, yeah.
Ever.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose adding quail and moving forward with a vote.
Okay. Okay, so here is my point of view. Section 4.2.1.4 livestock. Number 5, number of poultry permitted. Number B. So B is a half an acre to an acre. Does anybody know how many actually, most lots in Londonderry are an acre or more based on having to have radiuses for well and septic? So does anybody know what we're talking about here from a reduced size lot? I mean, because at 43,000 square feet, that's an acre. At 87,000 square feet, that's 2 acres. I'm at 21,500 square feet for 1 acre, for half an acre. So if I'm going to, so that is going to assume that I'm gonna have half-acre lots next to each other. So a half-acre lot is probably the size of the homes that are on Gilcrest, the ones they built in that loop where Calypso or something it's called. Thank you. So my thing is that, as I listen to this, while I hear all positive things about chickens, I have to think about the other 26,000 people who live here in town and their rights as well. So while I can get to an acre, I don't know if I can get to a half an acre, because I think the homes are quite close to each other, and I think that there's folks that are, that would be maybe infringed on that when we're coming from 87,000 square feet to 21,500 square feet. Yes.
I'm not an official of it, but I believe all those homes that are on less than an acre, per the ordinance, are leased land. My mom owned a house on the Nevins, but the land was not hers. So I think that would pass for that
a good point.
ordinance. Catesby, they don't own the land around them.
Yeah, thank
So,
you for that.
yeah,
I
so
was
they
just trying to
don't-
pick a size that somebody was
Right,
familiar
but the
with.
smaller lots per the ordinance of the town, if it's smaller, they have a combined ownership of it, so it's not theirs to
Yeah,
put a chicken
it's a
on.
condo association.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but from a size lot standpoint, we're going from what we permit now at 87,000 square feet all the way down to 21,500 square feet. That's a big change. Now, can I get to 43,000 square feet in an acre? Yeah, I can get there. But y'all are saying you want to go down to a half an acre. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. But that's what I just want to point that out. That's what you're saying.
I think there just should be attention drawn to the conversation that occurred last meeting in regards to setbacks and visualizing, where a coop needed to be placed on a half acre and such. And pretty much given the fact that a house, on average is around, 2,000 square feet and stuff, I think it's important to just take note of where the coop would be to adhere. One other point, Mr. Chair, if I may. The other thing is, I would like to clarify or ask a question. For whatever determination we come up with this ordinance, if there is a size that's less than what is permitted in the ordinance, is the vehicle of requesting an abatement still the planning or
Would be a variance.
a variance
Through the ZBA.
through the
Is my
ZBA.
understanding, correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. So if, to give you an idea, we require about 180 feet of frontage to build a home.
150.
There's some areas we require 180, right?
150 sightline.
150 sightline, 180 across the front.
It was 150.
So if I'm 180 across the front and 180 deep, I'm 32,000 square feet, or I'm 3/4 of an acre. Okay, so if I'm 180 times 120, I'm at half an acre. So 120 feet is not that far. And if I put 25-foot setbacks in there and I put a house in there, I get pretty tight pretty fast. So if I'm looking at a football field, I'm looking at, 40 yards. If you want to do a half an acre, I'm not going to stand in the way. But I just want to point out that's what a half an acre is.
So I'd just like to enlighten people as to how we got to the half acre.
Yeah,
At
that'd
the
be great.
at the planning board. We had talked about, there were people coming that had one, like almost an acre, like 3/4 of an acre. And we were trying to figure out where the break should be. And Colleen, after doing a lot of research, said that the half acre was like the absolute smallest that you could get by with. And so that's where we got to that, because everybody came into play, because not everything is equal, you know, not everything's a quarter or a third, and it just became this thing, and so that's why the half got put on there. Because if somebody has, you know, 0.75, almost an acre, they can't have chickens. It's very close. Is that little bit, I mean, I guess they could still go to ZBA, but that's, just so you know, that's why we came up with that, was to accommodate those people just under an acre who wanted to have chickens.
So 3/4 of an acre is 32,000 square feet, 180 by 180. You know, and one of the folks that came up made a very good point. Is 25 the right buffer? I mean, is that what the state says? Do they say 25 is the buffer, or should it be 50? We put 50 on wetlands. And like I said, I'm good with going with whatever we have. I just want all the information. If we're 50 foot from a wetland and we're concerned about water in this town, are we good with 25 and going to a half an acre with 25? Because it's not gonna be us fielding the complaints, and I'm not saying, and yes, everyone is right, there's good and bad chicken owners. But if we put it on too small of a lot, is that an issue? I mean, I don't know. I mean, perhaps we have code enforcement here, perhaps we can ask them. I mean, do we see an issue already with people putting chickens on 3/4 of an acre or a half an acre that we're running into already? And again, I'm okay with doing whatever we do. We're at a public hearing, Roger. You gotta come back up if you want to ask a question.
Okay. Roger Filio, 35 Hampshire Lane. Been here about 50 years.
Thank you.
You're talking about doing a half acre, but we also talked about a reduced amount of chickens on that. Is that still in 6 chickens on a half acre?
Yes.
And the 25 setbacks was noise control mostly.
I understand.
So on a half acre, we figured you could put all that in by doing the actual calculations and everything. But again, it's up to you guys. But I was just concerned that we were talking about having a full boat on a half acre, which is not the question. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from code enforcement, do you have a point of view?
I was gonna just ask.
You want to come up, Nick, and tell us, do you have a point of view on this? You're the ones on the front lines dealing with this.
Feel the complaints, Nick.
I don't really have an opinion. I'm not going to sway you either way to approve or disapprove it. I can just tell you that in the last 5 years, we've averaged 3 to 4 complaints a year that we had to take action on, and we've never had to get legal with them because we've spoken to them, and then we tell them on the initial conversation that they're going to be getting a letter, and the letter spells out what the fines are, and 99.9% of them respond. We never have to go to court. We never have to get legal.
Question.
Sure, of course.
On those complaints, what were the size lots?
They were usually acre lots. I would think with the setbacks that I don't think you're gonna have a problem. But that's just my own personal opinion.
With anything at half acre and over?
Half acre and over. Yeah, half acre would be the minimum. That's 21,500 square feet. And there aren't that many half acre lots in town. There's a few of them, mostly up in the old section of town. And those people, I think, could reasonably have a small coop with a half a dozen chickens without any problems, so long as they follow the rules. They keep them in and there's no roosters.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Okay?
Okay, what do you want to do?
Someone else wanted to speak, Mr. Chair.
It's a public hearing. You can come on up.
Hi, Amy Agostino, 6 Willow Lane. I just wanted to speak briefly. I hear your concerns about setbacks and wetlands, but to be fair, there are no limitations on people owning any number of dogs or cats that defecate outside near wetlands or on half-acre lots. And chicken manure is a resource, and not so much a waste product like dogs or cats. So I hear your concern, but I think as a relative thing versus animals that already exist near wetlands and on half-acre lots, I don't think chickens are really a big environmental concern. So, thank you.
Yes, Ed?
Ann Champa, 28 Wedgewood Drive, and also a member of the planning board. And I wish you folks would consider this and also pass it as proposed by the planning board, because we went through many months of deliberation on every aspect of it, every kind of animal. So I'd say leave it as is, please, and vote on it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, no matter what decision we make, someone's not gonna like it.
So that's with every decision.
So with that
Can't make
said-
everybody happy.
With that said, I say.
I mean, I'm telling you, I won't be unhappy. I'm just pointing the things
Yeah,
out.
no, I get it.
So that when I write down my little envelope here and I seal it, and 6 months from now, somebody comes in here and says, hey, you put chickens on a half an acre. I'm gonna open my little envelope and say, hey, I brought it up. What do you want me to do?
I was kind of surprised that we're only having 3 or 4 calls a year. That's not bad at all.
Nope. If you guys want to make a motion and make an amendment to the ordinance, please proceed.
I'd like to file a motion to accept ordinance.
You want to do the amendment first?
Or the amendment, thank you. I'd like to file a motion to make an amendment to add quail to the ordinance 2022-03.
So you're asking for the amendment to be made to section 5.5A point I, so that there's 12 poultry other than turkeys, no more than 6 turkeys, plus quail.
Plus quail.
How many quail are you
12.
going to allow?
12 quail.
We're going to allow 12 quail.
A total of either 12.
Total of either 12 quail, chickens, or turkeys.
Could I just say a few things on quail? I do raise quail. I could
Sir, are you
fit,
the quail expert?
not an expert.
You are now.
You are our new expert on quail.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So quail are a very condensed and small bird.
Yeah.
I could take this podium, cut it in about, I don't know, 3 sections, and you could have about 25 birds in this with very little waste. About 5 quail equal 1 chicken. So they're a very, very small bird. I make about the same amount of noise as a chicken. Just one bird produces way less waste. They're actually a better version of a chicken, if you will. They just cannot, those cannot free
I gotta
range.
tell you, I've been sitting up here between the planning board and the council for 23 years, and you won.
Well, thank you. But
That's the best explanation I've ever heard.
Like I said, they're a very good bird. Their eggs are very high in protein. They're actually better for you than a chicken egg.
And you can eat the shell.
So, like I said, I raise a little bit of everything. So, but
So how many quail you want?
I don't know.
You want 12 plus 12?
Just stick with the 12.
Just stick with the,
What's that?
so it's
Just stick with the
12 plus, or 12 chickens plus 12 quail?
No, just leave it at 12.
12
Period.
quail.
End of story. Either a mix, a combination.
All right. I'm gonna put that in my envelope too. And I'm in the middle of a motion. I'm not, is it gonna change anything I'm doing in the motion?
Well, it's only because we have a couple of issues there. What size of the lot you're talking about for adding these?
I'm adding them accordingly,
To all of them.
according to the sizes. So if they get 6, they get 6 quail. If they get 12, they get 12 quail.
Okay, that's one or the other.
No, it's both.
Mr. Chair, could I
No, it's
recommend?
is it one or the other?
It's a total or combination
Total
thereof.
combination of the birds.
Mr.
You get a total of 12, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Six.
to solve this problem, maybe you just change the definition of poultry to include quail.
Yes.
So that the numbers remain the same.
All right, make that the
That's
motion.
perfect.
Sounds great.
Well, I can't make the motion.
I would like to amend.
Sounds great.
the motion.
Will you just make the motion?
I make a motion.
You brought the whole quail thing up.
Yeah, right?
You know, we're going to be on YouTube. This is going to be a comedy routine. So you're making a motion to add quail.
I'd like to make a motion to add quail.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now make a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative.
Yay. Merry Christmas.
Now, you're all going to stay for the rest of the meeting and see how government works, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
But we never get into this agenda.
That was a laugh. That was a,
I don't want things to run afoul.
Why do I have a Mike, why do I have a resolution in the middle of the public hearings? Do I have to do a public hearing to accept all that money first?
The PD,
Right, but I have, number 2 here is do I have to do a public hearing for the resolution? Because I'm in public hearing right now.
so we come out of it?
Gotcha. Okay, I'll take care of it. Can I approve them all at the same time? So we don't have to have Justin wait around till I get to the next thing?
I got other things on the document. Yes, you can approve them all.
So I can take all the resolutions at the same time and vote on them?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anything
Okay.
that shortens this meeting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have Resolution 2022-08 through 2022-11, acceptance of various grants for the police department. Mr. Campo.
Yes, the police department has received 4 separate grants for 4 separate purposes. One is for opioid. It allows overtime of 3 to 4 hours roughly per week to allow our police department to reach out to those that are affected beyond their initial contact. Another one is for a long-range acoustic device, night vision equipment, and search and rescue equipment. All of those we are working as a pass-through.
Please take your conversations outside.
Those 3, we are working as the pass-through for the Southern New Hampshire Special Operations Unit, which our police department is a part of, so we will have access to those equipment should we need them.
Are there any questions on the resolutions that have just been presented? Yes? No? Okay, I will accept a motion to approve Resolution 2022-08, 09, 10, and 11.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolutions are approved. Thank you, Justin. Okay, folks, we're still in public hearing, and I have the following item. I have ordinance 2022-05, an ordinance creating the Londonderry Commercial and Industrial Tax Incentive Program, continued from May 9th, 2022. So the thing to remember and understand about this program is recently the council, I had another decision we made that I put in an envelope. We recently made a decision to increase the veterans tax credit, which cost us about $250,000. That was a decision that this council made that was unbudgeted. So in order to be able to drive revenue, which is the main function of this side of the government, is that we need to be able to provide the revenue to work across all forms of government. We really need to start digging in and looking at what we're doing to, even as we turn on to what we may be hard economic times, to help us, because we're given very little tools here by the state of New Hampshire. We've been through this in a couple of different iterations. I believe the town manager is going to present what has changed and what he recommends, and I'd like to see us take a vote on this tonight. It's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, we've discussed this a great deal, both at the end of last year and this year as well. And I agree with you that one, this is timely, given that vote that was taken at the last meeting, and 2, that it's time to just make a decision, yes or no, on this ordinance. This ordinance is not the same ordinance that I presented to you and Kevin Smith presented to you last year. It is not even the same ordinance that was presented to you the last time we discussed it. Rather, I heard a lot of the concerns that the council had and the public had, and so I've made additional changes that I'm proposing you adopt tonight. A couple of those changes are as follows. First, we've eliminated the lowest tier. I heard what the council said, which is that they are concerned about this exemption being too broad and being too widely available, and that it really is just to incentivize those rare projects of significant value that will assist in maintaining that tax base in a way that benefits the residential taxpayer. And so now, in order to participate and be eligible in this program, you need to have an increase in construction value of $15 million or more. We think that we're talking about a handful of projects here. But if we can use this ordinance as amended to attract those handful of projects that will really assist in building and maintaining that tax base in a way that benefits residential taxpayers, this is the way to do it. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, I heard what some of the council said. 10 years is too long to string out a tax exemption of this significance. And so what I am proposing, a 5-year maximum on this program that will make that tax relief available if granted to an applicant over a period of 5 years. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I've also received feedback from councilors and from the public that trial period that I proposed, the sunset period. Originally, I had it at 18 months. The concern is 18 months, given the lead time with some of these large developments, that's not really enough time. And so I am proposing a 2-year, 24-month trial period, after which this ordinance will sunset and be of no further effect unless the council votes to extend it. That's 3 years earlier than we could make the program last. I suggest to you that it is a way to take the program for a test drive. And I would close by saying what I've said before. We have a very limited toolbox that we can use to try to assist residential taxpayers. This is one way that I think we can do it, and I think it's time to take advantage of it.
I agree. How long now do they, if the 10-year thing, how many people and how many industries that we brought into town actually given us the amount of money that we expect to get to help the taxpayer for 10 years?
So, ma'am, I'm going to come back to you in just 1 second, if you can hold on to that for a second. Are there questions from the council?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please. I'm going to come to the public.
Can the council decide to, once this ordinance is approved, can we decide to terminate, or do we have to live out the?
You can terminate it. So the exception is, so if you pass this and in 2 months you decide this is a terrible thing, we made a mistake, you can terminate it. The only thing that you cannot do is terminate an exemption that has already been granted.
Right. We can change the chicken ordinance next council meeting if we want. I'm going to get letters for that one. That's what they used to say, right? All right. So one of the what was just brought forth, and I'm not going to make this nice lady come up here and walk up here again, is that we have put a number of incentive programs such as TIFs and other programs in. And we did run a number at some point that it was, that we generated a new revenue, which was in the tens of millions of dollars. Not this particular one would do this, but the incentive always is that the more we can generate in commercial revenue, we can offset the residential taxes. And that's that's the intent.
That's right. And I don't know what the number is of participants in TIF districts. My informed belief is that it's a very small number of actual participants and a very large number of increased value that we can tax.
Agreed. Yes.
And that being said, I stand by what my previous statement was last meeting or the meeting before in regards to having more money and more funds. I don't think that should be, I think that we should continue to focus on lessening the tax impact on the residential residences, the homeowners in the town. Because, you know, say you have a job, you're getting paid 50,000, you get a new job, you're getting paid 75, you know, it would be good to budget still at that, you know, close to that 50,000. I just would like to continue to see mindful spending with the taxpayer, the residential taxpayer in mind.
I share the same goal, and think that this is one way that we might be able to do that, given that the cost of everything is increasing. And so it is especially opportune at this point in time that we search out and bring in new value so that we don't have to go back to the taxpayers for more.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else from the public? I'm sorry, Deb, go ahead.
I still totally against this, for many, many reasons, but, the 5 years still seems, a little too long to me. Can these people apply for abatements like 22 other businesses did last year on top of this that they're already getting?
Yes, we
So
cannot.
you're gonna give them a double abatement?
No, understand what an abatement is. An abatement is granted.
Tax break.
If the property is being taxed disproportionately. So in other words, if the tax is not correct, if we haven't gotten it quite right, an abatement is not tax relief, it is a correction. And I think for people who, particularly residential taxpayers who are about to receive abatements, that's how it should be viewed.
Right, but I mean, if property still keeps going, that residential is higher and commercial is less, these companies can come back and say, I'm still being assessed too high for what I'm being assessed at because the commercial sales are not as high. So they can get this to fix up their building and still apply to get another form of relief that could affect, which it did affect, the residential tax base. Correct?
Well, regardless of whether we have this ordinance or not, anybody can file.
I understand, but this would even double it. Well, not double it, but it would add to it.
So it would depend.
And so,
So if someone was valued at $100 million.
Yep.
And they can show proof that their valuation went down to $80 million, they can file an abatement. We can also oppose it and go to court and show why it's worth $100 million.
right, but it still costs the taxpayer money to go to court and you have a 50-50 chance of winning or losing.
But anybody can do that.
I understand, but then
There's
we're gonna do
companies
this
that
on top of it.
specialize- Well, that would all depend. I mean, and that would also be something that I think that if we went to court, they would take into consideration.
But now are we taking into consideration the court fees that go along with these things that would happen?
You know,
Or can we say, if you get this tax relief, you cannot apply?
We cannot legally do that.
no, that's in violation.
Because I still feel that, you know, businesses are still coming. They might not be coming at the rate that we want, and they're still paying 100%. I think part of the problem is that if you look at a piece of property for lease or rent or to build in Londonderry, it's much higher than other towns. And we don't have the infrastructure in place like Salem does. And that's why a lot of the businesses are going to Salem. Again, I think there are many, many reasons. I don't think this is going to do what you want to do. And I think you're just grabbing at a straw. And we've always said that Londonderry is a great town to come and have a business in. We have 2 exits off of 93. We have connections going east and west. We have the airport. We have all these important things to a business. And when you devalue your product, what message are you sending out there to businesses? We're desperate for your business. Please come here. We're begging you. Is that the message that we as a town want to send? I, as a councilor, do not want to send that. I value my town and what we offer, and I want a business that's going to come here and who wants to be here and wants to be part of the community and do right by the taxpayers of this town. So for me, I'm just totally against it. There's nothing you can tell me that's going to, if a business comes in, I'd rather be getting that business at 100% of the taxes than 50%
so would
of
I.
the taxes.
Everybody would rather that occur, but
And it is occurring, correct? Are we not getting new businesses coming in?
yes, of course, we're getting new businesses coming in. This is something extra that I think we can do to attract businesses that would really assist the residential taxpayer.
Maybe.
I do not, and I disagree, but I respect your opinion, but I disagree that we are signifying desperation by passing this ordinance. I think we're signifying that we value our residential taxpayers and we're willing to think outside the box to do that.
And you might say that, but this thing was created basically for blighted areas. It was, and that's where it's been used in the state.
Counselor, you have framed this as a more of a rehabilitation thing. I think in communities like Derry, where there is frankly a blighted downtown, that's something that you might expect to see fairly frequently.
And that's
I don't
the
think that's how this is going to be used in Londonderry.
Then I would like to see an example of this used in a town that doesn't have a blighted area.
Hey, Deb, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Architectural building in the Northeast has been down the last 2 years. You know what that means? Things are slowing down.
Right, because of the costs of everything and the
we
lack
use
of
that as an
labor.
indicator. So, based on the budgets that I see, they're not going down. The school's not going down. You tell me what we can do to increase our tax base. We have to drive revenue. That's it. We have to drive revenue. You're against it. Tell me, give me a solution to it.
I think that we can look at other costs, areas to save money, maybe ones that are uncomfortable. I don't know if this is the right spot to bring it up, but you kind of know what I'm talking about. Employment, and the school should be looking at it as well. We have to think a little bit more aggressively. I think businesses are coming, and they are building. And I don't know for how much longer. Lack of supplies, you can't even get glossy paper anymore. The cost of diesel adding on to landscaping projects. Customers are getting charged the cost of diesel because it's going so high. I don't see that this is necessarily going to bring in what we're looking to do as far as businesses. We want.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, to answer the question about how this incentive program was developed, the legislature, in its wisdom, determined that the program that they had developed for Coos County, in order to create incentives for more industrial and commercial development there, was appropriate to expand to the entire state. And so that was the beginning of this incentive program. And to answer the direct question, has this ever been used in a non-blighted area? Well, my recollection is that the town of Milford, which I don't consider to be a blighted area at all, was one of the first communities to adopt this program, and they used it to retain Hitchner Manufacturing, which is a very significant industrial producer within the state of New Hampshire, a critical piece of our whole economy. And they used it not to try to overcome an area of blight, but to create an incentive to make sure that this important taxpayer in their tax base stayed there. So I think it's an important tool, not just for attracting additional development, but it can also be useful to a company that may be considering renovations or reconstruction of an existing facility that may be very costly.
Steve, if you can hold off a second, go ahead.
This question is for you. So is Milford actively have this on their books? And when did they do this? What year?
I don't know the year, but it was when the law was first adopted.
And
This has
you
been
re-
on the books for quite a while now.
So it was a long time ago in a different economy.
I didn't hear him say that.
I didn't say that at all.
No, well, when
This
was it? When was this first adopted? Do we know?
We can certainly look that up and get back to you, Counselor.
Sure, I have
but
it right here.
It's within
Okay.
the last 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years?
So while they're looking it up, Steve,
Somebody we want to keep in this town, that would make it look like.
so Steve, you worked in the Department of Revenue, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with we have very limited economic development tools. Off the top of your head, do we have 5, 10? I mean, we have TIF and we have this.
We have very limited abilities to create incentives for any kind of development, but especially commercial or industrial development within the state. So we have to, in Londonderry, compete with other communities which are, have their own similar attributes. They may not be identical to Londonderry, but when it comes to other states, the number of tax incentives that are available is sometimes limitless. And I would encourage that talking to the State Economic Development Office is probably a good way to understand how important it is to be able to provide some benefit. But these are very limited programs, and this is one of them.
This was adopted in 2017, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so within the last 5 years. Thank you, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in public comment. You're more than welcome to come up and address the council. Not public comment, public hearing, excuse me.
Richard Belinsky, 89 Hall Road.
Thank you, sir.
I understand what you're trying to do, and Mike, I like the changes you've made, but I still disagree with it, and I disagree with it for a few reasons. The main one being, for those 5 years, if you get a 15 million or more person and you give them this, and is it 50% the first year and then goes down? Has that been changed?
Well, it depends on where the council sets the exemption, but it could be as much as
high
50%,
as.
correct.
So you're gonna have a budget of X, and you're gonna have to collect X in taxes to cover that. And let me finish before I get interrupted, because I already kind of know what you guys are gonna say. That 50%, if that's what it ends up being, whatever that number is, has to be made up by everybody else that's paying taxes, because you gotta collect enough to make whatever the budget was. So for those 5 years, whatever they're getting for, that company is getting for deduction is being made up by every other taxpayer. Now, you could say, and the argument could be, well, yeah, that's true, but the other 50% is being paid by them. So it could be 100% more. And I get that. The problem is, a lot of these businesses, when they come in, they're gonna come in, there's a reason they wanna be in an area. Be it transportation, be it land that's available. Coos County, that's a whole nother story up there, because that's a poor county. So I kind of see why they did it up there. So if they really want to be here for the right reasons, they're going to build here regardless. I know, I did this. They're always going to see what they can get out of you. That's just good business on their part. If they can get it, why not get it? My feeling is if they really want to be here, let them pay their fair share, whatever that may be. How do you explain to the rest of the taxpayers, by the way, you got extra on your tax bill for 5 years because we gave them a break? Yes, it could have been twice that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. They either want to be here or they don't want to be here, and there's nothing stopping them at the end of the tax incentive period saying we're out of here. I understand you want to drive revenue, and I get that. But you're kind of doing this on the backs of the taxpayers. both residential and commercial, because it will be broken up equally, whatever the shortfall is from this. I appreciate the fact that you changed it. It's much better. It's more palatable for me the way you changed it. I just don't think it's a good idea. I just, I know there's really not a lot of ways to make more revenue, but if cuts need to be made, cuts need to be made other places. It is what it is. When you get X in your home budget and things come up, you got to make a decision. Your kid don't go to the private school anymore. They go to public school. You have to do what you have to do. And, I don't want to be argumentative, but basically whatever the shortfall is has to be made up by the other taxpayers. It is what it is. There's really not an argument with it.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to draw a contrast between this tax exemption and a tax exemption or credit like the veterans tax credit or the elderly tax exemption. This is, by definition, all new value. We are not collecting less in taxes than we're collecting today because of an exemption that's granted under this program. Nobody's tax bill is going up because of this program. For that reason, because it's all new value to the tax base by definition.
I have one more thing, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Please.
I just one question. So if I, as a resident, right, wanted to add on to my house, increase my tax value, why couldn't I apply to this?
Because the legislature has not authorized us to grant that kind of tax relief. If I had an exemption for that, of course I would grant it. But the legislature hasn't allowed me to.
Thank you.
Yes.
Legislature of the state, sir?
Correct.
Yes, Chen.
So, just to clarify, not trying to overtalk it, it's new revenue. It is not, so hypothetically, if it's, they were supposed to pay 100,000, they're paying 50,000, the overall town budget doesn't go off of that 100,000, it goes off the 50,000. Is that correct?
That's managing it.
I'm not sure. Let me just see if we can get at that a different way to make sure that I'm answering the question correctly, because I just want to make sure that I'm analyzing it correctly. We are not, we're not in a situation where we need to, let's say that we have a property that's valued at $30 million. And this exemption, and they're being taxed on that. And this exemption comes along and all of a sudden they're being taxed on $15 million. And so that shortfall has to be spread to the other taxpayers. That is not the case here. That is not how this program works. By definition, even if it's a rehabilitation, the tax exemption only it doesn't apply against the existing value. It applies against the increase in value once the rehabilitation is completed. That increase in value is not, correct. It is not reflected in the tax base today. There are no taxes being calculated or paid on that amount. And so after the exemption is applied, the construction is done, the exemption is granted. We actually have, let's say it's a 50% tax break, $15 million more that we're adding to the tax base that will offset other people's value. And so I hope that illustrates how that works. It's all new value. It is either the value attributable to the rehabilitation and not the underlying structure, or it's the value attributable to building the big new whatever, and not the underlying land. And what I would say is, if this program were structured differently, and it allowed us to grant a tax exemption against existing value, well then, yeah, we would have that problem. But by definition,
Can you repeat what you just said, please?
it does not. Yes. So if the statute and the program applied the tax exemption not only to the increase in value attributable to construction or rehabilitation, but also applied that to the existing structure, whatever it is, or if there's no existing structure, to the land, then we would have the problem that we're talking about, which is that we have to make that up. By definition, that is not the case here. It cannot be the case here.
Thank you.
All set? Okay, so I just have one quick question. This is on a case-by-case basis, right?
100%.
So anybody who comes in may not, the council may not approve it.
That's right. They have to demonstrate to you that there's a public benefit, and they also have to show that any costs or detriments that are associated with the project effect on infrastructure. Maybe it's a business that lets off noxious fumes. That those costs and detriments don't outweigh the public benefit.
Got it. Anyone else from the public?
Yeah, I'd like to speak.
Oh, we got,
Ran in front of you.
Okay.
you got cut off at the pass, Roger.
Neil Dunn, 21 Sherwood Road.
Hi, Neil.
Howdy. I too like the new improvements better, but I'm against this as well. Over the 41 years I've lived here, we've spent millions of dollars on preserving orchards. We've spent millions of dollars in putting money into maintenance trust funds and all kinds of things to cut our taxes. And in 41 years, 1 year my taxes went down $10. So it's not working.
We got that 1 year, Neil.
And so as a senior citizen, and I'm thinking I can't even afford to live in London and Derry anymore, this really concerns me because this is starting to look like something. It started with Kevin Smith proposing this only for phase 2 of Woodmont Orchards. And to me, I didn't like the sounds of that because it seemed like we were subsidizing one out-of-state developer. And at this point, at $15 million, it's starting to look like, well, it might not be Woodmont Orchards, or it might be. Maybe that's the threshold that they're looking at. But maybe we're subsidizing real estate investment trust that has nothing to do with any of us here, and they would have built it here anyway if it makes business sense. We do have successes. We have 2 buildings going up on Aviation Drive. We have some people down at Exit 5 over near the Auburn landfill talking about where the old concrete systems was. Talking about building. I don't understand why we would need to give businesses a break. If the market can't hold it without that break from us, then it shouldn't be built. And yes, other towns and states might offer all kinds of money to get employment in and to get jobs in there, but they're on income tax-free places. We have some other benefits that these other states don't have. I think what really hits me the hardest is when I went to talk about my taxes, because they went up over 12%, and I was told that commercial stayed flat. I'm thinking, okay, so commercial's flat, my taxes went up 12%, and now we're gonna subsidize people to come in and keep commercial prices depressed or lower. And so what you're saying is, well, this is all new revenue. Well, if it keeps suppressing the current value of commercial properties, we're gonna be losing it next time we do a new assessment. And so I think this is another one of these, it sounds great on paper, but there's no need for it because of New Hampshire and the reason people move here. And because it's not gonna work out the way you're thinking it is. And I know you might think it sounds that way. You're gonna suppress the current commercial values, and we're gonna be subsidizing real estate trust and big out-of-state developers that probably would build it here anyway, because we shouldn't be guessing we shouldn't be driving the market. It should be a capitalist market. So I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ray. Ray, you gotta move faster.
I think you're older than me, Ray. You gotta get up. I just have a couple of small comments to make. If everybody were dying to come in here and build a big building, make jobs and pay taxes, Woodmont wouldn't be as empty as it is.
Yep.
And it's true. It's, they're behind schedule because of many things. So if he can give them some sort of little advance to get them in here earlier, perhaps that's the way to go. Sometimes in sales, and we are in sales here, we're selling to commercial development, you might have to give a little bit more incentive than somebody else. And you're 100% right. The cost of living in Londonderry is going to go up, whether there's a new factory building or a new, what's the thing they don't want to have in Hudson?
Amazon.
Amazon. Yeah, that'd be a good person to have.
Not building that anymore. Not building that anymore.
No, because the people didn't want it, but I think it would be good for us. Woodmont's got plenty of room.
Amazon pulled out of the deal.
Yeah.
I think it went to Nashua, didn't it?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think those are good points. Just to respond to a couple of points that were made earlier. I'm no assessor, but I don't know how bringing in new high-end commercial users would depress commercial values in town. It is true that commercial values are going are up less quickly than residential values. There's not a lot that we can do about that. The other thing I would just highlight is nobody wants to grant a tax exemption to a company that would have come here anyway. And so that's why we eliminated the bottom rung here. We felt that not only in response to the council's calls for a narrower program, but also because we don't want a tax exemption that is over-inclusive and pulls in folks who are not being incentivized to come here. And so that's very much in my mind.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. And I don't know all about this, but am I correct that this has to be $15 million or more? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's a fairly big project. But it also mentions about rehabbing existing properties or commercial buildings. That would have to be a pretty big building that you're going to rehab for $15 million.
I would agree with that.
However, there probably are some buildings in town that are not being utilized and perhaps should be. Maybe we should look at that. Now, the other thing is, somebody mentioned, I think the assessor mentioned about a program that was started for Coas County. This is Rockingham County. Coas County and Rockingham County, 2 different places. Also, I'd just like to see in the audience here, it says the town council believes it is in the public benefit. Further, declares to be public benefit to encourage rehabilitation utilizing commercial industrial structures. All well and good. What industrial structures are we going to rehab for $15 million? The town council determines that this is in public benefit. I would like to know how the town council, with all due respect, has determined that this is in the public's benefit.
So we would be presented with a criteria by the applicant of how they believe it would be in the public's best interest or benefit. We would have to weigh those things. Whoever's sitting up here would have to weigh those things with the recommendation of the town's attorney and of the town staff of whether or not they feel that it would be in the best interest of the community. Is that close?
Exactly.
Okay, which all sounds good, but in this here, it sounds like, with all due respect, that you've already decided that it's in public benefit.
I think with that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. So it's on a case-by-case basis, Ray? So it will be each.
I heard what you said.
Yeah, nobody gets it automatically. They have to come and present to the council in order to be able to be eligible.
That's right. I think what he's reading from is the cover sheet of the ordinance, which just says the council has determined that it's in the best interest to have a program
Right.
available where we would consider
So
this
it's
on a case by
written
case basis.
in the positive way for the
Yep.
for the ordinance. I apologize.
Yeah, okay, all right. So, personally, I don't think it's a good idea with the way the economy is going today, the way that I mean, I'm doing okay, I'm not struggling, but some people are. And some people are wondering how they're going to get by with the grocery store, with the gas prices, with everything going up, with their mortgage, with their medical bills. And we're looking at helping out a developer to come here. And once again, this is a great place to come and do business. And Woodmont has had a problem. They're doing some pretty big projects right now, which is probably good. But I'm not sure why we got to sort of bend over backwards to get big business to come here. Why wouldn't they come here? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, so I'm going to bring this back to the council for deliberation. I'm looking for, from the council, how do you want to proceed? It's not up to me, it's up to you, you know, you guys got to tell me what you want.
It could go on the vote, to the voters if we wanted it to.
Be good for a warrant article.
Something of this magnitude.
So here's your choices. Your choices are to either accept and approve it as it is, make a motion and a second, and we'll vote. You can take this and you can make an amendment to it, go through the amendment process, and we'll vote that way. Or you can ask for it to be continued, or someone can invoke councilor privilege and move it to the next meeting. So those are all your options on the table.
I'll invoke councilor privilege. I'd like to get some more of the data that I asked for. I'd like to know more on the Milford and why they did it and for how long they did it for. And was it put in place just because that specific business asked for it? And I'd like to find it in more towns. I'd like to know how many towns have had a success rate with this in using it, and compare and see what they've done and what happened from it. Like, what was the fallout? Personally, you know, I just think
I'm
that
happy to let you respond.
there's some more information that we could get.
Please respond. I know you want to, so go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, we have examined this thing to death. A lot of the requested data, I don't know how it could be obtained, frankly. Some of the requests, such as how, you know, when did this occur in another town? I'm happy to try to run that down. But I also want to make sure that we're deliberate about where we spend our time here as a town staff. And I'm concerned that some of the requests for data are just not achievable.
So maybe I can make a suggestion. Perhaps we could ask someone from the state, from their economic development group, I'm not sure what their proper name is, to perhaps they could come on in and or they could correspond in some way that will help us move this either forward for or against.
I'm happy to make that request.
So that, and perhaps they'll be able to help with,
reasonable.
being able to
That's reasonable.
attain whatever it is, information that Councilor Paul is looking to attain. Would that work?
Yes.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yes.
That would be great. All right, so folks.
She have to withdraw her council privilege?
Well, she's putting the council privilege in to move it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can get the information.
So now
I
the next
just
meeting,
want to
do we
see
have
a
to vote
proven
on it?
track
I'm going to
record.
continue this public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that it is an invocation of the councilor privilege, because if it's, if it's just being continued because she has indicated that, because the councilor has indicated that she intends to invoke that privilege, but there's not an actual invocation of the privilege, that invocation could be made again at the next meeting.
That's fine. We can do that. I'll just take a motion to continue.
All right.
I just need a motion to continue.
Make a motion to continue till
Second.
next meeting?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This ordinance is continued to our next meeting, which is the, I'm sorry, our next meeting is when? The 20th? Thank you. June 20th at 7 PM. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am at 10 o'clock. I have several items still to go through here. I would like to be able, I don't necessarily need to adjourn, but I'd like to be able to take 1 or 2 minutes with the town manager with regards to the items that are left on here and which items we want to go through in what order, because I do have a number of staff still sitting here tonight.
Mr. Chairman.
So if we could take just a couple of minutes to do that, I can take, Drew, can you give me a 5-minute recess? We're not even going to leave the room. 5-minute recess, Drew, thank you.
Which said, I'll drag my feet. There's a lot of circumstances that I struggle with.
None of them live there.
All right, folks, please be seated. All right, folks, we're going to move some things around on the agenda here, see if we can get some folks out of here. So I'm going to move to Order 2022-09, an order relative to the licensing of a junkyard pursuant to RSA 236 Murray's Auto. I got Brad, Brad, where are you, Brad? Did I
Bless
lose
you.
Brad?
Bless you.
All right, well, so much for that.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, we could address the, oh, here he is. Okay.
Hi, Brad.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you,
Counsel?
sir. We're doing Murray's Auto, please.
Murray's Auto. Very well. In various trips visiting Murray's Auto, I've had to tell him to put up his fence. The portable fabric fence has fallen down somewhat, not completely. I've had to have him take cars down off of the piles. They get a little tall sometimes.
I have to accuse myself.
Please let the record reflect that that Counselor Paul has stepped down due to a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
There was an issue where they started to build up consistently in December of last year. And that went through approximately to March. The reason for the being was S&S was having the same issue at the time. That there was where they shred the cars in Massachusetts, the shredder had a fire and an explosion, which didn't allow them to accept any more vehicles at the time. So they built up in the salvage yards of both Murray's and S&S. After the machine was fixed in Massachusetts, the cars began a slow process of the piles going back down again. And the yard, at present time, the inspection that I did is completely cleaned up. The cars' piles are down. The aisles are clean. DES practices are in place. Best management practices are in place. It's very neat.
Thank you. Good. Questions from the council?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I did reading through the minutes, you do recommend approval, or they met all they met all the requirements.
Correct, Counsel.
Of the application.
Correct. I recommend that Murray's does get renewed for their license for this year.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're not in public hearing, we're not in public comment. It's up to you guys if you want to accept comments from the public.
Sure.
Okay?
Richard Belitsky, 89 Hall Road.
Thank you, Richard.
I will agree at the current time, it looks fine. But it hasn't since after, matter of fact, at licensing last year, it wasn't in compliance the day it was licensed. You can see through the fabric all the way down to the ground. The cars are above the fence 80% of the time. It's always clean this time of year. We go through this every year at licensing time. It comes into compliance. There's been cars left out overnight in the front parking lot. They're using the parking spot in the front, in the road that they've been told not to. The fact that I probably could have let the whole thing with the shredder go, except for the fact, you know you don't have any room and you're out of room. Why are you still bringing cars in? Stop. John, you made the comment a couple of times. You can't, your inventory can't outdo your capacity to keep them. And it's the same thing year after year after year. I have been corresponding for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, not that long. 4 or 5.
Eight or so.
Well, there's about 15 emails that I sent to Mike at various times with the cars over, being able to see through the fabric fence. There's no way I should be getting letters from Panziaco's attorney. Town also got it. Talking about this, talking about there has been no code violations since 2015. Totally not true. This letter is such a fabrication. I mean, I don't know if you want to address that.
No, I want to acknowledge what Mr. Belinsky is saying, which is that, well, I mean, this is my file on this matter, and I can tell you the town file on the matter is probably this wide. And so I acknowledge a lot of what he's saying, and I've been working with him in my prior role to try to address some of these issues with code enforcement and with the property. And what I can tell you is that the town's position hasn't always been 100% consistent on this or in keeping with the various applicable requirements. But what I told Mr. Belinsky, and I sent a letter, 4 or 5 page letter, looking at not only the current state of the property, but also some of the concerns that Mr. Belinsky had about grandfathering and the barn and all of those things. And I addressed those. I don't think he agrees with it, but I think he would say I at least addressed those and looked at the history of it.
Yep.
One thing I'll say is this. Yes, I've personally been by the property in the last 8 months and seen cars that are visible over the fence line. My understanding is that it's in a much better condition today, which I would suggest to you is what the council should consider in determining whether to grant the license. That being said, I do also acknowledge what he is saying, which is that it's a little bit frustrating for me at the town that we need to get down there and issue reminders, that we need to say, hey, this is getting out of control again, can you come into compliance? That's really not the way it should be, but understand that we live in the real world and there are external factors sometimes that apply. I think that we code enforcement granted, and I was satisfied, it was appropriate, a forbearance based on the circumstances that were described. What I also said to Mr. Belinsky was, if their machine that eats up the cars breaks down again, and then the cars are stacking up, I would look at that a little bit differently. I guess the only other thing I would say is the statement that was made about vehicles queuing up on the side of the roadway. That is prohibited by the various court orders. Mr. Belinsky did provide satisfactory evidence in the form of photographic evidence of that condition existing in 2019, in the summer of 21, and then in November of 21. And so I don't think it would be inappropriate for the council to either warn the user that if that condition should arise again, the council will have a public hearing on it, or it may be appropriate for the council to require that no parking signs be installed in that area at the user's expense. I offer that for your consideration.
I have one more thing too before you do your thing.
Sure.
As far as the fencing goes, the state requires a solidly built fence of at least 6 feet that significantly hides the cars. We had a whole list of requirements above and beyond that just miraculously, from what I've seen, unless I'm mistaken, disappeared. And you've been quoted many times, tell them not to have the cars over the fence. You're not allowed to have them over the fence. The problem is, the fence is cloth. And it should have never been allowed cloth, but Dave Karen allowed it to be cloth. You can see through it during the daylight. I've sent Mike pictures where you can read the names of the trucks and stuff in there through the cloth. Then it got doubled up. And that was a little better, but you could still see it. But because it's not solidly built, This just, every time you have a snowstorm or a major windstorm or whatever type of storm, the stuff gets blown down. And then it's down for months. If I can see the cars at ground level and read the car, that's not a solidly built fence. It's not hiding the cars. He's got plenty of, that's why I didn't bring it tonight, because I've sent him probably 15 emails with all this. It's the same thing I've been saying for 20 years. The cars on the side of the road that he acknowledged today. And for 20 years, I've been getting blown off about it. If it was every day of the year, or most days of the year like it is today, you wouldn't hear from me. It's actually not bad right now. But that's the norm at licensing time. And it's also a little better this time of year simply because the leaves are on the trees. But they're on the trees, what, 4 months a year? Soon as those, if he goes back to his normal, as soon as it's gone, we're right back to seeing the cars over the fence, seeing through the fence. I wrote a letter that Mike has to Dave, not to Dave Karen, to Kevin, 2-3 years ago.
I don't have the date handy, but.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, whatever, about the fencing. And he has it, and Kevin said that he was gonna come to the council and see what their appetite was for making him put in a proper fence. And I talked to him a few times after I wrote that, nothing ever came of it. And he even admitted in those emails that he's in violation.
And just to, if I can just add a point of clarification, so the conditions have not gone away. They actually are still in effect by way of a court order that incorporated them. The requirement is that he maintain the existing wood fence on the westerly side of the property, including that which was completed with the construction of the garage as approved by the planning board in 2007, and the approximately additional 100 additional feet of 6-foot tall stockade fence that was added in 2014. It then goes on to say that Mr. Dudek shall maintain the double fabric layers that currently exist above the wooden fence, with both layers secured to the fence to eliminate flapping. Those are the requirements that the court adopted by reference, and that continue to exist against the property. There is nothing that would prevent the council from imposing additional requirements if that's what it wanted to do.
Well, there, just to clarify, there was additional requirements that were imposed by the council a few years ago. And every year, one seemed to drop off. I can go back to my records, and I have them for years back.
Yeah, I will say.
I'll send those to you.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's not an easy thread to follow through the town's files.
No, I'm sure it's not. So, I mean, this is just the same thing that's been for 20 years. It's always great this time of year, right around licensing. It used to be a month or 2 months earlier, past years, and they changed it to July. And then it goes right back to the same thing. And I agree with educating. It's been 22 years. If you were in the same grade in school for 22 years, I think they'd have enough of you.
Can we reduce the time of license to do a semi-annual versus annual?
I'm not, maybe, but I can't, I'm not comfortable.
I think we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the statute allows for a public hearing if there's a condition of noncompliance. I don't believe, I don't want to opine one way or the other without researching that question, because I don't know
So
the
what we've
answer.
done, what we did in the past for some other things is we would give a conditional license for 60 days, require that they would do certain things within 60 days, and then revisit the license. That, right now, to do that here in this hearing, I think would be too soon. Well, I just don't know. I think it would be, I have a code enforcement or a zoning person who's come in here and told me he's met all the criteria. I understand the history and the different things that are being said, but I've got the enforcement officer telling me you should approve the license. So that's.
Yep.
Now, what you can do is you can, go back out to them and tell them, here's some things that we think we need to see, and you can try to move that forward from this point on. But I think if you try to restrict his license at this point, I don't know that we have a lot of standing.
I share your concern, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that, on December 29th, we were able to substantiate the complaint that there was a screening issue again. And so at that time, the assistant building inspector delivered to Mr. Dudek I'll call it a sternly worded letter that basically said, we shouldn't have to keep reminding you. It concludes by saying that with respect to such recurring issues, it is the town's intention to address future violations as follows. There will be no further 30-day notices with opportunity to cure. Again, we're talking about violations that have been present and then resolved previously. I'm not talking about new violations that, haven't been an issue. So there will be no further 30-day notices with opportunity to cure. The town will commence enforcement action, and all future violations will be tracked and presented to the town council at the time of license renewal.
See, I
That's the-
think if you're going to ask for him to put up a new fence or put up a 10-foot fence without the fabric and everything else, based on the history, I think you're going to need to go and then ask for an amendment judgment with the court. I mean, I don't, and I don't know if that's what anybody wants to do, but I don't see another path.
I'm not sure. I think that.
Neither am I.
Yeah, I think that the inherent in the town's ability to approve or deny the license is the ability to impose reasonable restrictions. Those restrictions don't necessarily need to track what prior courts have decided in resolving actual cases before them in terms of conditions. But I take your point that there is a lot of history at the court level here that needs to be considered.
Okay, so what do you want to do? We're on a time clock here.
Yeah. We have the recommendation to approve.
File a motion.
And I mean, it sounds like if I can just provide reassurance to the council, I'm not going to tell Brad what to do. I'm not the code enforcement officer, but given the concerns and the warning that they got on December 29th, I think a fair course of action would be to grant the license based on the representation that he's in compliance today, and then just deal a little bit more aggressively, as we said we were going to, with enforcement issues that arise.
It's up to you.
Sounds reasonable to me. Make a motion that we approve.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's move on to,
We
Mr. Sim-
invite Counselor Paul back in, please.
no, she has to
gotta
recuse
stay.
herself for the next one, too.
Understood, thank you.
Let's move to SNS Metals. Mr. Simonetti has been very patient sitting in the back here. Hopefully, we can dispose of this one as well this evening.
Absolutely. SNS Metals, it's been occasion I stop by, I have to ask Vito to pull the trucks back a little bit. And it's not all the ones that's in the front. It's occasionally when he sells some of the trucks that he has, a new one will replace it, and it doesn't stay in back of the berm that's in the front. So it needs to be moved back. Or a worker's truck that needs to be pushed back. Another issue, and that's not all that often, but occasionally I stop by, that's an obvious one. I can see it when I roll down Rockingham Road. I will make visits, unexpected visits, just to see how the aisles are inside the junkyard. I call them the fire lane aisles. As we all know, there was an issue with fire sometime a year, 2, 3 years ago. So I try to keep those aisles all clear for the fire department to get through, especially that going to the crusher. I mentioned it to Vito, and his employee Victor takes care of it immediately. It's done within 24 hours usually, sometimes 48 hours, depending if Victor is working that day. I recommend to the board for renewal of a license.
Any questions?
To file a motion to accept this ordinance.
Second.
So for order 2022-10, I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brad.
So, there you are. So, next item. Next item is the military sidebar with the Londonderry Police Employees Association.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can, unless the police department wishes to address this, town hall staff were approached by the Londonderry Police Employees Association representative, and the current, this is the current state of affairs at Londonderry Police Department for the patrol union is that currently members who are serving in the Guard or Reserves are doing so on their own time. And they've come to us with an ask, which is to revive an old sidebar. So in other words, a sidebar that was previously in place. And what that did was it put the weekend service, so the 2 weekends,
1 week in a month.
1 week in a month,
Summer.
2 weeks a year. Thank you, Counselor. On the employee, but pays the differential for that 2 week period between their town pay and their military pay. And often that's a wash because the military pay tends to be equivalent with the police patrol pay. Right now, we have one affected employee in that entire union, and they've asked to return to the terms of the old sidebar. This is something where, before the discussion on sidebars that we had a month, 2 months ago, we would have handled at the operational level because there's hardly any cost entailed. I'm bringing it back to you for awareness and to see if there are any concerns about us doing this to support our veterans who continue to serve at the police department.
Yes, please
So this
proceed.
is for drilling reservists and National Guard. What about if they get called back for a deployment?
My understanding is if they were deployed, that certainly we would comply with federal law, which
Service
provides
Member Civil
jobs.
Relief Act.
That's exactly
Sarah,
right.
correct.
But that but it would be, they would have to use their own time.
Right, the sidebar would not affect longer periods
So
of deployment.
only
It's
as
just
a
with
drilling,
regard to
not
the.
Title
Yep,
10, not, okay.
right.
That's certainly an item that we'd be willing to negotiate over when the contract is opened up.
Okay. I'd like to, I mean, if there's another conversation.
There's nothing we have to do, it's a sidebar.
All right, fine, great.
Right, I'm just
Thanks for
looking
the info.
if, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to Order 20, there's no questions? We're all set? Order 2022-11 and Order 2022-12. Cable Equipment Capital Reserve Fund and Cable Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, two different ones. One is for, looks like one is for the school district, for,
So both are for the school district.
both for the school district?
Yes.
Oh,
So
hi, Justin.
Hi. Sorry, I just came up. So the school district is allotted $8,000 on an annual basis out of the $32,500 we receive for the public access education grant, or not grant, money we received from Comcast. Previously, in July, they did not request their full $8,000. They only requested $7,477. So 523 will finish out their 8,000 this year, and they're requesting their 8,000 for next year as well. My understanding, and you have the pieces of equipment that are looking to purchase, my understanding is that this is to allow the cafeteria a more permanent setup for meetings.
Okay.
Is this an advance for next year?
I will release it in July, but where you guys only have one meeting in July, if they wanted to get going with it right away, I wanted to be able to have the money, I wanted to have the authorization to be able to provide it.
Which ordinance is this again, Mr. Chair?
This is 11 and 12.
Take care, good night.
So I guess they won't be using the council chambers anymore.
That I'm not sure of, but
So I'll accept the
And
motion
somebody
to
here may know
approve Order 2022-11 and 12.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, motion carries. Next item, Lithium Springs Conservation Transaction.
Mr. Chairman, this is for the council's and the public's awareness only. I want to inform everybody that effective May 31st, the town, via its Conservation Commission, has signed a purchase and sales agreement to conserve property, which is known as the Lithia Springs property along Nashua Road. This is a property that is prime water and wetlands area, and something that I think it's fair to say is threatened by development. This purchase and sales agreement, which I signed, reserves to the town council and the Conservation Commission the right, which you have by statute, to either approve or disapprove this transaction. And I plan to present this matter to both bodies in the coming days. I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of this and the fact that the town is working to conserve this area so that it is not developed.
Do we have the amount of the transaction?
$1.5 million.
Trying to remember, do we actually have to have a public hearing on that?
You actually have to have multiple public hearings.
That's
think
what I
3.
recall.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. We haven't done one in a while.
No.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as presented for May 23rd, 2022.
I'd like
Mr.
to make
Chairman?
an amendment.
Oh, did you want to do something else?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It does state in the minutes, acting town manager Michael Malaguti. At the time, May 23rd, Mr. Malaguti was the actual town manager.
So he was not an actor, he was the actual manager?
Unless you'd like me to go
Not
back.
the stand-in.
I don't want to demote him.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion with an amendment?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the Londonderry Town Council meeting minutes for May 23rd, 2022, and remove acting town manager Michael Malaguti and make that town manager Michael Malaguti, please.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Oh, so I need a second, sorry, second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Do we have any liaison reports?
No.
Nope. Do we have a short town manager report?
Mr. Chairman, in view of the hour, Mr. Chairman, this one is fairly extensive.
Long. Yeah.
People should read it and reach out to me if they have any questions.
Okay, so we had graduation last week. Anything else exciting going on? Not that I'm trying to rush anybody. This is the latest we've gone in several
Long
years.
time.
Several years.
Nope, I just want to mention that Leadership Londonderry application period is still open until July 9th. Applications are on the front page of the website.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our next town council meeting is June 20th, 2022 at 7 o'clock. We will be moving to a summer schedule, which will be posted on the website. We'll have one meeting in July, one meeting in August, and I believe we're going to have one in very late August, as we're going to be approaching budget season very quickly behind that. Is there anything further for the council tonight? I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Aye, yeah, yeah.